Hello, this is Neo, just an average CSGO player, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
Right, this is going to be another one of my Patreon donated discussions. On this one, we've got a pretty packed house. There's actually going to be 5 people and me on the episode. And if you know, if you're on this fucking channel, we could have nobody in this channel and I could fill 2 hours. So we'll see how it goes with that. Hopefully people don't run over each other too much, but at the same time, we'll try and actually facilitate a conversation. When we have this many people, I actually don't mind it if people are going in and out, etc. And I'll, to some degree, because there's enough people that it's hard to manage a conversation, I'll just like be a bit more strict and like I'll tell people if I pause them, or like if people don't know, I'm very good actually at pausing a point and then I can go back to the point later. It's why whenever any idiot's like, you interrupted him, it's like, listen, dumb fuck, I've done about 10,000 interviews. Do you really imagine if I thought I'd interrupted a key point, I wouldn't just rewind the clock back to it and remind him of what he said? Like, so anyway, you'll just have to trust or not that I know what I'm doing here. So key thing is, first things first, have you actually ever done an episode of this show before, Captain Useless?
I have not.
Right, first of all, you actually, I don't know if you know this, but you actually do have the golden voice, mate. Like, you actually should do voiceovers for stuff.
I appreciate that, and I am going to be pivoting towards that once I can actually buy a computer. Well, a 38.
Has anyone ever told you that for real? Like, you actually have a very good voice for narration or something, you know.
The story of that is my buddy sold me this microphone. It's a Rode NT USB. I got it for cheap from him. I started playing with that in Valorant, and I get these comments basically daily. So I'm hoping to quit my day job by the end of the year.
Oh, commentary is also probably another field you could go into. Like that story about Scrawny from CSGO, I don't know if you're aware, is real, where he basically just did, like, him and another few people, I've saw this happen like in 1.6 as well. What would happen is they just played like pickups or matchmaking games, and then they would talk on the mic, and then for a joke, you know, when they're dead, they would like commentate for the rest of the people who were dead, like, oh, he's coming in now, and that. And basically, if some of those people, if the clip just blew up, they actually became like real commentators afterwards. So it's not even an impossible dream, you know, like it is a dream. Like you can't know if it's going to happen, but it's not. Some of those things are worth shooting your shot on, you know?
Absolutely. And I mean, I enjoy being entertaining. So even if I don't take off when I'm streaming, I'm still going to be streaming, and I do shoutcast for fun when I'm dead in games where I don't feel bad clouding the comms because I'm usually playing competitive. But yeah, you basically spoke my projected trajectory.
What are your main games then, just so we can set the scene of maybe what you might refer to, etc.?
I think as far as mechanical knowledge and like depth of knowledge would be CSGO, but since open beta of Valorant, I've been playing Valorant pretty much specifically because it's been kind of a breath of fresh air since I got burnt out on CSGO after 4,000 hours.
Fair enough. I do notice that despite the fact, like, I have loads of people who watch League of Legends videos, they don't see, you know, this is an interesting detail, they don't seem to be the people who actually want to have a discussion. They just seem to want to go, I love double lift, haha, this is, can you say he is trash, haha. I notice it's nearly always like, it's like 85% CSGO every time, but that's fine by me, by the way. I could just talk about CSGO forever, so we can stick with that. Right, here's what we'll do then. I don't know if you've listened to any of the past episodes, Zach, but we basically operate on the Fight Club principle, so you have to ask the first question. So what topic are you coming in hot with here, mate?
All right, so I want to do a comparison of the moves for Liquid and Faze, basically including Kerrigan. Which team made out better, and how long do you think it should take for either of them to install their preferred system?
When you say the moves, are we just going to like I'm assuming we should cheat and just only count from when like Fallen became the IGL team Liquid and not like when he first joined, right?
Yeah, we can forget about that dark period.
Okay. I want to see where some other people go with this one. So who wants to jump in on this one?
Last time I was on, we actually talked about the Liquid one.
Well, okay, then contrast it then. What do you think of how would you contrast the Faze and the Liquid one? Because I know you have a lot of opinions.
I was actually quite disappointed with the first outings of Faze, but they seem to have woken up. I was checking some stats the other day, and they had amazing stats, but didn't win the games for EPL.
I will say, just as context, in case anyone like hasn't actually followed the games or whatever, I'll just double check now. But didn't Kerrigan like officially join like something mental like the day before kind of
2 days
began or
before,
something?
I think it was.
Yeah, so the problem with that
can't
is
really form an opinion.
You can never know. Like sometimes, like Fallen joining Team Liquid, sometimes they've secretly been scrimming for 2 months, which actually then makes you think, what the fuck were you doing with your past team? Sometimes those are real, and like the story where Like, for example, if people don't know, Cold Zero was definitely practicing with the Faze Clan people for ages before he joined. So him shitting the bed in those first games at ESL New York were worth all the laughs in the world. That wasn't because, like, you know, he didn't just walk in and go, hello, your name's Nico? Oh, okay. I'll sit over here. I hope we can be friends. Want to have my pencil topper? Like, it wasn't like that. Like, he actually definitely fucking practiced with him and screamed. He just shit the bed, you know, which was hilarious, but whatever. Right, okay, someone else. Laggy, you have some more thoughts, mate? Aside from just being underwhelmed?
Saying that the Faze Clan has so far the third highest overall rating in the EPL, and they didn't even make it out of the groups.
Do you have any like projections then? Like, do you have a one? Like, listen, obviously, cards on the table. If people watch my content, they know that like I'm probably edging towards the Faze one, but even then, I haven't actually given a strong opinion on that. I've just said that I thought Faze can be very good with Carrigan and these players, and I thought falling to Team Liquid was a good move, but I never really projected where they would end up. So, what are your thoughts, like? Who's going to be the better of the two, or what factors would decide it?
Faze going to be the better of the two, and I don't think this Liquid lineup will last until the summer. I think there will be internal struggles.
Okay, that's a bold one. Come on then. Come on, Zach.
So I want to say that Fallen is going to bring back or at least bring some structure to Liquid that will bring them back to, you know, their dominant times. But I don't feel like they're the team that they were. And if they end up becoming a new team because of Fallen, I would be happy with that. But Faze, just on raw skill and the return of Carrigan and what we've seen him be able to do with, you know, he takes dirt and somehow makes gold. So I think Faze is going to be in for a dominant year, and I think Fallen is not long for Liquid.
Yeah, I'll break it down like this. Faze without any roster moves should see significant improvement just given time. Whereas Liquid, I think, need a roster move additionally, and it might even be Fallen out, even though that would seem ludicrous based on the money behind the scenes, based on the fact that he has only been with the team for so long. For my money, there's just too many question marks surrounding Liquid, based on the fact that obviously Fallen was practicing with them as early as I think it was October of last year, technically, because Twist wasn't sure if he was going to be in or out at that point. And obviously they played the end of the year with him. But then Fallen comes in and, okay, he's not calling according to Moses and everybody else on the Liquid side. And then he starts calling. It's just, there's a couple of too many false starts for me to have any faith in that. And I was already kind of hazy on whether or not Fallen would be a good pickup. It was contingent on him actually being good with the AWP, as well as being able to lead the Liquid side. And I'm not sure that I've seen enough of a sample size to know that he's good for either of those yet. So there's too many question marks for Liquid for my money. I don't think they're going to be nearly as consistent as in terms of their upward trajectory. And you've already seen that so far with them going up and down, up and down. So I don't expect that they'll be making it out compared to Faze anyway.
I was full of question marks basically as soon as I saw that, you know, the things weren't in motion to make Fallen IGL from the get-go, because if you're not picking up with the intention of making him IGL, and maybe they were, they were in the middle of a tournament or events. I can't remember exactly when it came in, but that major question mark for me, and then having this pageantry of handing over the mantle and still not exactly much better CS being played just scares me. And I'm from North America. I have all of the hope in the world in North America, but Henry G took Cloud9 away. So I got Liquid left, and that's it.
One thing I don't get, just a side tangent, but it is slightly relevant to what you were just talking about with the Liquid IGL situation, is I still just don't get to this day how Stewie2K is still just like the person who could never make a mistake ever. There's only two groups of people. There's the people who never think he had any value and he's complete trash. So they just hate him, I assume, because he has red on the HLTV fucking rating or something. And then there's the next group of people who just think he is literally like the fucking Maitreya sent to like correct everything wrong in the world and lead us to a new age. Like, I've never understood why everyone was so in on him being an IGL. Like, he was doing like a good job the first year he joined, but even then that was like, no one can be the IGL, so you give it a go. Wow, that was better than expected. Like, it was never some great IGL. So I was amazed how long fans were willing to sort of put up with that experiment, you know. Like, I understand why they did it in terms of who was in the team, but that could never have lasted. So yeah, the part that I find crazy is, and I have to say, I haven't heard anything behind the scenes, by the way, and obviously I know people like Moses. I think that is real, you know. I think they legitimately were initially just going to try Fallen as an AWPer, and then he became the IGL. Now, I will say, as Moses pointed out, you do pick Fallen up knowing that that's always on the table. Like, you're not doing it for no reason. It's like if you let fucking Cold Zero be the IGL of Faze temporarily, like, you're going to make sure that someone else can do it if he decides not to. It's just too much of a risk otherwise. But I do find it a bit underwhelming. Like, one thing I think's mad, it just shows again how, like, sadly, I'll have to become a general manager for a team before anyone will ever actually implement the ideas I want. Because now, somehow, Team Liquid have managed to miss 2 chances to have Carrigan be their IGL. Like, this is unbelievable to me, because if anyone knows, like, I know Andrew's pretty deep on this. If you're in the NFL, right, one of the things that at the moment the Chicago Bears franchise is going through is there are a whole bunch of teams where, like, generally they're pretty well built. Like, the Chicago Bears team's always built on defense, basically. And what you do is you either have teams where, like, assuming they have any potential, you either have the quarterback that's your franchise quarterback and you're just trying to get the pieces around him. That's not many people because there's not many franchise quarterbacks. Or a lot of people out there, what you do is, maybe the analogy, if you know basketball, is when all those teams in 2010 were trying to build a roster that LeBron would want. You build a team that's good, and then you try and convince the franchise quarterback to come to you. So, for example, in this offseason, the Chicago Bears really thought they were going to get, like, Russell Wilson from the Seahawks, who was sort of like the sleeper, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So their logic was, if we get him, that's it. We've got the magic ticket already. Well, what I can't believe is how many of these fucking teams in CSGO have the chance to get someone like Carrigan. And I'm talking like motivated Carrigan, wants to be the best in the world. And they literally say no, and they pass on it multiple times. I think this is like that story where I think like the 49ers passed on Tom Brady like 5 times in his career or something mental. Like just mad stuff like that. So as a result, like, I don't think these teams will ever understand until these players retire. Like, you're the bozo who said no to having one of those players on your team and leading your team. Instead, you chose players where it's like, oh, it could work, or it's an experiment. It's like, who needs experiments when you got all the money? Like, I don't know if people know this. Team Liquid's one of the orgs that has all the money they need to buy anyone they want in any game. And the best thing is, it's actually something if you're an old school fan of mine, you'll know this. I actually called it in like fucking, I think it was in 2014 or 2015. I said that Liquid 112, now obviously he mainly runs the League of Legends side, but they have the money on the CSGO side. I said he was basically the best GM in North America. And everyone's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Because this is before Team Liquid had ever won the LCS. And I just said, look at how many times this guy buys the right star players. And if they don't turn out to be right, he just buys the next star player that can replace them. And so as a result, to me, it was inevitable. Eventually, he would get the talent that he needed. And what do you know? Someone let the equivalent of a franchise star go in double if he picked him up, and then he won a whole bunch. So I'm just amazed at how many of these orgs sort of like need everything spelled out to them. And here's the part they don't get. I'll draw the analogy again to the like NFL example. No one's given away franchise quarterbacks. So if there's a real franchise quarterback being given away, there's a reason why. Occasionally, there's the Russell Wilson example where it's like, they want to opt out. Other than that, it's one where it's like, maybe he's too old, or maybe he had an injury, or maybe he had a down season. If you don't have the balls to buy the dip there, get the fuck out of the market, you will never win. Like, you're not going to, it's not like they're going to win 2 majors and then offer you him. Like, that's just not going to happen. So I was actually very underwhelmed with that Fallen pickup in that sense. In the context of who they had to pick up, I get it completely. It's probably the best choice. But the idea that there were other names out there who were proven, and you don't even make a play for them. You're not even asking if they're going to be available. That's crazy to me. So is there anyone else who wants to jump in on this topic?
I just want to say, coming from a Detroit Lions fan, I understand the consequences of garbage management.
That's a good one, by the way.
Firestone Ford. I am excited about Jared Goff, though. I just hope that he actually wins. I will say we had a franchise quarterback in Matt Stafford and tried to build around him, and we were just too friggin' incompetent to do it.
Basically, the problem with that team as well was, like, when now Matthew Stafford goes to that team and doesn't win the Super Bowl, everyone will go, see, he was never that good. It's like, mate, it's fucking the end of his career now. Like, this is whack. Like, he had, like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, well, basically when Megatron was still there, they could have done a lot with that team for sure. Right.
He's
by the way,
5,000 yards when you have somebody with the reach of two.
I will say one thing though, and this is one thing I noticed that in the NBA and NFL they don't anymore analyze like this because of obvious cultural implications, right? You know, whenever I'm talking about someone going to an org, I point out if that org has money or not. So whether you know it's a good deal or not. In America, what they should do in every single sport is talk about where you would be playing. Like, an obvious reason people don't want to join the Green Bay Packers has nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers. It's like you have to live in fucking Wisconsin. And a lot of people don't want to live there, especially, by the way, it goes without saying, like, a lot of people who are athletes, let's just say, that's not going to have the culture they want there. So they're not going to go there. They're going to go, by the way, they'll go to the Atlanta Falcons before them, because look at what Atlanta's like. It's a party city. So what people don't think about is this. I don't think it's a coincidence, mate, that the Pistons and the Lions have generally toiled. And even the Pistons championship came from sort of like reusing other people's thrown away parts, because who the fuck wants to live in Detroit for the last 20 years? Like, there's a lot of problems there. You know, it's not a sexy spot to live in, is it? Whereas meanwhile, even in your analogy, every LA franchise, like, you have to be pretty incompetent to fuck up an LA franchise.
You've got so much money.
Between the two, though, let me think, who would I pick? I think it's a tough one, actually, because I think actually the potential's similar for both teams. But I'll have to say, like I said before, I would have to edge towards Carrigan, because the difference is this. I actually think if you look at all the greatest teams of all time, the IGLs pretty much deserve the credit in those teams, as in, like, nobody was carried. Like, the closest is exist in NIP, and that was the beginning of the games. Like, to be fair, the IGL probably had the least overall impact then. So, to me, the problem is, even though Fallen, listen, was a very great player, he hasn't shown me the longevity and working with more players beyond 2017 that Carrigan has. So, in my opinion, if you have the IGL, I know you're going to think, you said this about Cloud9, yeah, but I didn't know they weren't going to fucking spend any more money. The point is, if I have, like, the team on paper, like, this is the team, and then one player, not the IGL, doesn't work out. So in this team, for example, pick a player at random, pick Brokey or pick Rain, or fuck it, go for Cold Zero if you want. If they don't live up to what you hope their potential can be, you can replace that one player with another top player, your Faze clan, remember, and you could instantly be top number one if you can't already be. The problem I have with the Team Liquid one is I don't even know if the fall experiment does work out. I'm less confident of it. I think it's worth a shot. If that doesn't work out, I actually think they're in a terrible position where you have, like, they're basically in the position that, like, NBA teams get into, where you're like the fourth best team in your conference and you got so much talent, you'll make the playoffs every time. Every time you'll be in the NBA semifinals, your fans will be like, maybe it's this time, like the fucking Pacers or whatever. And then you'll just get your heart broken in game 6 or game 7 and you'll go, oh, damn it. And it's like, that's the worst position to be in some ways. Like, there's a reason why in the NBA they say blow it up. You know, if you can, basically, if you know you can't win, you have to sort of like throw it in the waste paper basket and start over. So Liquid's way more experimental in that sense, especially now they've lost Twists. Like, to me, the other thing about Liquid that tilts me off the face of the earth is I only ever get to see Elige, Twists, and Naf be led by Nitro or Stewie 2K. This is a joke, right? I don't even get Stanislaw, for fuck's sake, and I don't even think he's some god or something. But I don't get Stanislaw, I don't get Fallen with Twists as well, I don't get Carrigan, I don't even get MSL. Like, I can't even get anything. So to me, like, that's one area where I do think Team Liquid mega mismanaged that roster. Like, they just pissed that trio away, because that trio, especially for NA, mate, that's like when I have those discussions and I say, it shows how good Sweden was at CSGO, that no one gives a fuck that, like, Prime, Flusher, Get Right, Forest, Crims, Olaf, none of them ever played together, except, you know, it's separately in the different teams. No one has to care because they won the majors anyway. But I look back and I go, I think you might have missed one there, boys. In the same way as the French scene, while they were actually good, should have had Kenny S and Shocks together. It was the most obvious fucking pairing of all time, but they didn't do it. So NA can't fuck around with that. Like, you guys haven't had many teams that were, like, really could have won a major, maybe like 2 or 3 lineups. So when you have one, you got to get the mileage out of it. You got to, and to use the analogy before, you got to use the window. Like, it's all well and good waiting until the window ends and then bringing someone in. Now you're just on a hope and a prayer. Does anyone else want to get on this topic before we move on?
I'd give Fallen more chance than other people who are, like, out on him, because I've just seen, like, in normal sports, too many, like, managers fall apart at a club and then are better at the next place they go to.
Sure.
Like, I remember Brian Billick always said he felt that a manager should move on every 5 years, because he said just people stop listening to you.
Yes.
So I'd be willing to give him, which is why I rate people like Ferguson and whatnot so highly. This is like, wow, they managed to do it for like 20 years.
Oh, you're a god. If you're like him and Belichick, you must be like a half hypnotist as well as good at the points, like, you know.
you're so far above the people who people compare you to if you do that. But so I'm willing to give him a chance. Now maybe he was just like good for that one team, and like he's doing better than some people thought. But yeah, he's not won a championship and nor threatened to, I guess you could say. So I'm willing to give that a kind of see how he goes there. I have been a bit underwhelmed with Faze in the Pro League results. Like, I haven't watched the Faze games in Pro League, but just seeing like when I looked at the stats, I thought Twist would be the person who had like, it was like, oh yeah, he's just come off a rough period, but it's actually Coldzera. Like he doesn't look like he's going well, and I expected Carrigan to have gotten them together by now, to be honest. But overall, I'd probably still pick Faze, but I thought by the time Pro League came around, Faze would look a bit better.
It does poke some holes in the narrative where Carrigan is the best person to essentially, if you need to win a tournament tomorrow, you put Carrigan as the leader, because he's got a lot of really good pieces. And obviously he literally was put in like a day before one of the other tournaments, before Katowice. But I agree that it does worry me a little bit that narrative hasn't actually rung true this time around. At the same time, Coldzera not playing to form is probably a big part of that, and maybe it's just because he's adapting to not being the IGL as much, or not being the leader as much in whatever context that he was before. And maybe
that is also a LAN narrative, to be fair.
Yeah, that is true.
Like, in my opinion, when you go to online play, all of those narratives go out the window. Like, you've already seen, there's no such thing as being a veteran. Like, you could be the most tenured players of all time, and Gambit just beats you. Virtus Pro just beats you. In America, Chaos just beats you. Like, that unfortunately, I've always said this. I said this right in the last summer when all those teams came up, heroic, big, fucking call. I just said, guys, they've actually invalidated each other. Because if one of them came up, like if Big only came up and the top 10 was the same, but then Big came to number 1, now we'd have to have videos like, what have they changed strategically? They've revolutionized the game. Did they do something with, or did this player develop? Like, it can't be that all the top teams are trash and now all the fucking tier 2 is tier 1. Like, it can't simultaneously be that. Like, there's other factors. Like, I've got to say, no one's going to say it publicly because who the fuck wants to kill their own game? But a lot of the tier 1 pros are just like, I'm just done with this. I was done with this 9 months ago. Where is the LAN? If there isn't a LAN, I'm just fucking mailing this in. And they're not going to say that because, again, by the way, another thing is they all get their full salary. So if you pay me 20k a month, now, I would still say it, but maybe someone else would go, maybe I'll just shut my mouth a little bit and keep taking the 20k a month. So unfortunately, like, I do feel like a lot of those aspects, like, in a way it's good because when we get back to LAN, it will be the ultimate test for some of these factors, you know.
I've got a question in a bit about basically how screwed our perceptions are because of online events.
Just do it now, mate.
All right. Because I'm really just wondering, especially with the streak of performances coming from CIS teams at Katowice, like how screwed is any interpretation or like real analysis of teams right now just because it's not in a LAN environment? I understand they end up in the same quarters, in the same hotels, on the same internet connection, and it's virtually LAN, but it still ain't. There's no crowd. There's no pressure in comparison. I feel like it's all of the pro leagues all of the time, whether it's Katowice or a major.
I had an analogy for this years ago. Maybe some of you remember it. I always used to use Xantares for this. And the analogy was the first Matrix movie, where what I would say was the problem Xantares has is he's like Neo only when he's in the Matrix. And when he's in the Matrix, he's the shit and he can just wreck everyone. But then when he goes into real life and he's on the Nebuchadnezzar, he's all fucking emaciated and his muscles are all atrophied and he's just eating gruel like, this fucking sucks. Like in that scenario, right? Instead of using Neo, we'll just use the other people. So all the other people who were like the hackers going into the Matrix who weren't Neo, they got more powerful when they went into the Matrix. But they couldn't outright beat all the agents. So the agents are the online superstars here. They're the people who are just onliners. So guess what? A lot of them would probably say, fucking like, Privyet, or whatever, you know, if that's enough of a hint for you. So, like, my problem basically is, you should, in the face of it today, treat all these results as real, because online play is real. It's still Counter-Strike. There's still a lot of factors to it. It's just that it is a different type of Counter-Strike. So I would actually I think the best contrast probably is like the NBA in the NBA bubble. Like, mate, there's a lot of results I think would have gone differently there. Like, a lot of things that went very, very different. I even think of the part they couldn't say about that publicly that was like, because it's not a sexy storyline, it'll kill people's interest, is I heard, like, think about this. This is the part no one set up. And how you know in media there are no real voices. Right? Here's why a superstar player whose team probably won't win this year won't give a fuck when he's in the bubble. Right? He has a $150 million contract. He lives in a mansion. He has all the supercars he wants. He has all the watches he wants. He goes to the club when he wants and they say, oh, hello, sir, come to your table now. They give him the bottles. All the whores are there. Everything is there. Everything, right? Now he's just in a bubble. That's like he's gone back to summer camp, mate. If his team can't actually win the championship, that guy's going to give 80%. It's just the way it is. In fact, even just the fact that his life is it's kind of shitty while he's in there. It's not going to feel good for that guy. And I know everyone wants to believe, because I notice in sports, the real secret is you don't actually put in the time and effort to become like a legend. You just copy what the legends say in interviews, and then you get some scrub coming out at like 40th in the draft. Like, my plan is to win the championship, man. It's a ring or nothing. It's like, you just heard someone say that. You don't know what those words even mean. You're just mouthing them. So as a result, like a lot of players, they need strong motivation. And if it doesn't come internally, it's got to be external stuff. So when you get basically demotivating factors, it's going to kill some of the will to succeed and to play in the game, you know. So unfortunately, I do think a lot of the online results, they're not fugazi, like they're real, but they're only real in this context. And it's not that means they're not at all real offline. It's just that there's no way to test right now. So I've always said, to me, the most interesting question is to go the other way. It's to go, which teams would make it offline, blah, blah, that angle. And the real problem with that is, I notice everyone just tends to go in two camps. They either want to Men in Black delete the online period and all the old teams before are the best, or they want all the new teams to be good because they just believe in the story. Whereas I tend to have like my own factors. Like, I had reasons as to why Big would be good but not the best, and then Hero couldn't make it, and then maybe like Cole would be good and they'd be around the underdog. I had my own angles on that one. So what was the first part about that though?
Basically, just how much of a grain of salt we should take it with, because of lack of audiences too. Because like you were mentioning with the NBA bubble, the fact that there's nobody really there in person removes any worry of genuinely being held accountable.
Oh, of course.
So they can screw off completely and not feel bad about it. It's like a pickup game at LA Fitness to a certain extent.
You can't even kick them out to some degree. Like, if that's your star play, you can't say get the fuck out the bubble. Like, you have to, you know, even the coach can't really mandate that shit. By the way, here's the analogy for you. Here's what we have to do right now. If anyone in this chat has ever been or can even conceive of going to a strip club, an establishment where women take their clothes off, and depending on which state in America you live in, or maybe you don't live in America, and the Americans in the room will have to go, that's bizarre, that's the places other than America. But let's imagine there is. Where, depending on where you are, maybe you can sometimes touch them. Maybe sometimes you can't touch them. Maybe they touch you. Maybe they can't touch you. Whatever the rules and regulations may be. If you were, hypothetically, to partake in such an activity and pay one of these young ladies to take you for a lap dance, a private dance, in that setting, I would hope all of you enter the room knowing this woman probably doesn't have any affection or feelings towards me. She is just doing this as a job. Perhaps even cynically, she will pretend to do that. But I tell you what, if you think that halfway through, you will not enjoy the lap dance. So I would just say, while the lap dance is going on, I would lie back. I would just let yourself imagine it was real. I would fall into her eyes and think that her soft touch is just for you and it's because she cares, and when she whispers in your ear that she only did that for you, because it's going to make the experience a lot better. But I tell you what, the second you leave again, if you go and tell your friend, I think she likes me, you are a fucking mark, so please don't do that. So I think that's the online, that's probably the best analogy for the online era anyone could come up with. Suspension
of disbelief just to make yourself feel better.
You have to, right? I also said there's another angle to it as well, by the way. I'll flip it this way. If anyone saw any of my League of Legends shows where I was talking recently, like I talked to a player in LCS who's like brand new on the Crackdown, a guy called Revenge. There's someone in LEC as well. I basically gave them this angle. I said this, right? As far as I'm concerned, mate, you don't play in the LCS. You just play online League of Legends that's sort of like LCS, and you hope it's like what the LCS will be like when it comes back. But here's the upside, and here's how I would frame it if I'm you. What you do have right now is a slightly more even playing ground with the best players in the LCS. So go and play them, do your absolute best to compete with them, try and beat them, give yourself a chance to shine in this dimension. It might parlay into the offline aspect, and you might get a chance you never would have if you'd have just sunk immediately when they threw you in the water, as it were, if it was LAN, and make that the upside. So for players, especially if you're not a proven player, there can be an upside to this era. It's just that I think for fans, we can cut this onion a fucking million ways, boys. It's going to stink at the end, and everyone's going to be crying.
You can only really analyze what's in front of you. You can't know what's going to happen when they go off. When they go like online, on LAN. The thing that disappoints me is that people don't even analyze online that well. Like Katowice, I found that the CIS storyline, people like ignored things like, oh, Faze literally got built like 2 days ago. So this isn't like, that's not a real EU team, really. Like one of the EU teams that would usually win isn't even a real team currently. Vitality fell apart like a week before the event. So like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of the people like to just grab onto like the kind of the exciting hype storyline for right now.
No, that's absolutely one of the things I thought was whack as fuck about that event. This is one of the reasons why I'll never ever let anyone tell me, and I'll never admit, like, oh, you're just not a good analyst. It's like, listen, I don't claim to be the best. And if you ask, like, every fan in the room what they want, to be fair, a lot of them actually are just silent fans and they do just want entertainment, so a lot would want me. But let's say they actually go, no, I prefer like those idiots on Reddit, like I would want the analyst to be Launders, Maniac, Pimp, and well, I guess they'd never say Pimp, that's an absolute barefaced lie. But, you know, whoever else they'd say, they'd put together like 5 people, and then they would essentially want a fucking Dota 2 desk where 7 people analyse the fucking draft and like what was possible, and like they all just say half the same thing with slightly edgy picks each or whatever. In that world, you're never going to get that type of meta-analysis, unfortunately. It's one of the things that me and Richard basically like pioneered, because again, Richard always says it, and people who aren't from the UK, I mean, maybe Andrew understands from the Commonwealth sort of mentality, but if you don't know what a pundit is, you're never really going to know what that role is. Like calling it analyst is actually a pretty stupid approach, in my opinion, unless you overtly call like Yanko the analyst and then you call like me and Maniac like pundits or something, you know, because in my opinion, a pundit's about a perspective. It's more like being on a political show where they bring on 2 or 3 authors and they all give their thoughts, you know. You don't just go, which one of you was the best analyst of history? It's like, well, it's not what we're fucking doing, is it? We're giving our thoughts. Like, in fact, this guy could even just be a paid shill for all we know. So in my opinion, they do a very, very poor job. It's the same reason why I have to bring up the point I just brought up earlier of like, well, when we had analysed this team buying a player, did they even have money to buy better players? Fans don't do that. They just go like, lol, look who Mad Lions is signing, lol. It's like, well, for all you know, maybe they have no money. Or maybe they have loads of money and they're not listed. Like, actually, it's super relevant to know either way which one that goes, you know. That's why I've always loved the sports angle of, yeah, are you a big market team? Do you have a high salary? Can you go into the luxury tax? Like, those are way more important to me than, like, player A versus player B, because they inform whether you can ever have a player in player B's shoes that can beat player A. If it's impossible, then, you know, we're just chasing our own tails, aren't we?
I feel like there's a pretty big lack of general, like, in the current space, as far as analysis goes, it does feel like people are trapped in their immediate results, and everybody's just like, it's kind of symptomatic of the whole pandemic situation where people are locked away, is they only have what's in front of them, and there's a quote that sounds like it's not related whatsoever, but there's a quote from an old Joe Rogan episode where he had Duncan Trussell on, and Duncan Trussell has this line where he says, you know, you're thinking about this, you're thinking about that, and he kind of goes on a bit of a tangent. And then at the end of the tangent, he says, and suddenly you've been thinking for 30 years, and you just woke up, and you just realized, holy shit, my whole life passed me by. I feel like that's exactly what's happening in terms of CS analysis right now, and probably more things than just that. But on this topic, it does remind me of how I feel a lot of the analyst desks put together, and kind of like the low-hanging fruit. It's like all they can reach is that right now. It's all they give themselves the opportunity to reach. They don't allow themselves to dig any deeper. And to some extent, because of the crowded schedule, maybe they don't have the opportunity to, but it does lessen the viewer experience, I think, even if they don't exactly know what the missing piece is. They don't recognize that the issue is a lack of depth or whatever. it feels like that's what's going on in a lot of these cases. I think that was a big, fault in the analysis of IAM Katowice for my money, is that everybody was just reacting as if, like, basically everything that just happened was always going to happen that way. So let's break down why it happened that way, instead of really taking a bit of a step back, which I think you get more of an opportunity to do when the schedule isn't as packed and when your home life isn't as crazy because everybody's locked away, and so to speak. So that's probably more broad strokes than maybe what we were just talking about. But I think it's relevant to point out here that I haven't actually felt like this has been Counter-Strike as I have known it since, 2019, more or less.
The main problem with that, go on.
I definitely agree with the echo chamber aspect, because like they're stuck dealing with what's in recent memory. And I don't know about anybody else, but it feels like 2020 does not exist. I literally feel like life was turned off and turned back on. So, I mean, they have to form opinions too quickly because their frame of reference is too small. But at the same time, they should know. And pundits, being the ones that are gutsy enough to take opinions, I feel like they should make informed opinions.
Here's the analogy for you. People who do events think they are day trading, but I think I am investing a portfolio. So my opinions are a portfolio. And I don't just get rid of a fucking amazing stock because it slightly went down now. I buy the dip. Like, Carrigan's a great example, right? Look where Mouse Sports was. I bought that dip the whole way down, boys. So that means, as a result, in a sane world, I get all the profits when he goes to the top again. I don't, because people are idiots. And sadly, in this analogy, I mean, the good thing about the stock market would be you could have any opinion you want. If I've got all the money, mate, fuck you. What do I care what you think? Sadly, in this case, the stock, in theory, is public opinion as well, I guess. So there's a component, it's like consumer confidence, I guess, in that scenario. So basically, everyone else treats it like day trading. Oh my God, it's the end of the world, this went up 20. What's down 5, sell. Like, they're just going like that. So as a result, unfortunately, because they're just analysing the match they've just watched, they will nearly always just be thrown to and fro by the wind. They have no control over it. Whereas what I do is, you've seen plenty of games where I go on the desk and I go, I don't believe that Vanguard's actually the better team here. I don't believe they actually will be a good team going forwards. I don't believe they'll ever do anything comparable to this. Now, don't worry. Even though I essentially shorted a Vanguard all the way to the final of the major and beyond and was proven right to an extent that is ludicrous, oh, don't worry. The idiot haters will just wait until now they have Yakinda, who never was on that team. And if they come like, top 8 at the next major, I'll have been proven wrong, won't I? And I'll be an idiot who doesn't know anything. But don't worry, that is also part of the game. Like, if you haven't noticed, none of the people who do that can ever actually make the people who like my content think I have no credibility. It doesn't actually work. So luckily, the mechanism doesn't entirely. They're only really sort of like a bunch of demons just like grumbling with each other, like, fucking evil piece of shit. Like, it doesn't really affect anyone who's legit. In fact, you even get people who say, based on stuff people said, I used to think you were an idiot, but now I actually like your content. So that all works itself out. Again, it's like investing. It's all about the long run, mate. It's not about the day-to-day swings and roundabouts. You want to see where you are in a year from now. So the problem I have is essentially that, which is I've always thought the wackest thing ever in Counter-Strike is form. In my opinion, form is a very, very loose concept that doesn't work vaguely like people treat it. Like, I won't spoil a video, but I've got a video coming up where I tear apart all analyst desk shit like this. And I'm not going to call people out by name, but they're all going to be like, I feel spoken to, because I am speaking to them, including all my friends. So basically, one of the biggest problems in analysis desk goes like this. I thought it was going to be 2-0 for Team A, but Team B just stomped them on the first map. I'm going to have to go Team B 2-0. It's like, what? The fuck are you talking about? Why would the factors on map 2 change completely because of how map 1 played out? Like, have you never watched a basketball game before? Do you at the end of quarter 1 go, well, Team A is leading, I've got them winning the game? It's like, there's 3 more quarters to play. So basically, in my opinion, analysis isn't like day to day to day. Now, you can do some of that, by the way. It's probably even appropriate to keep people updated of like, well, they've lost the last 3 games, or they've lost a couple of maps on overpass, or this team just shocked them on the first map. But at the end of the day, analysis always should come from first principles. So essentially, what you fundamentally analyze about those teams, think of the form as an amplifier, but even then it's a weak one. Like, everyone here who's listening to this call now, who watched Cloud9, knows that Cloud9 on map 1 is never Cloud9 on map 2. Mm-hmm. It can be a totally different team. So if that's Cloud9, they're not even the best team in the world, mate. Do we really have to like wig out completely when Na'Vi loses map 2 and gets stomped, but then still wins map 3 and map 1? Like, in that scenario, to me, it's like, if anything, the form overall was still like, they're a very good team, but they don't always hit their peak, and they have a bad sort of C game. You know, that's analysis, but you won't ever hear that on a desk, because unfortunately, the other one, and why I brought up form, that kills me to my soul, is when people who are my friends and the most expert people about Counter-Strike watch a group stage of a tournament where on day one, none of the legends give a fuck and they lose a couple of games and they just like invert all of their fucking hierarchy of values about who is good at Counter-Strike all of a sudden. And then they're shocked that the team that wasn't supposed to make the playoffs loses in the first round. It's like, guys, is this your first rodeo? Haven't we all done like 50 of these motherfuckers? Like, yeah, I used to get confused, like, 4 events in. And what I did is I worked on my skills. I figured out what would be the flow chart, what would change it. There's the thing people never do. If you analyse a game, here's how you actually ask someone like me. Say I'm pessimistic about a team, I don't think they'll win. What you say is this: okay, what would they have to do to win? Now you test my analytical skills. And I tell you what, if they then win and I did some of the things I said, that's way more valuable than predicting who's going to win or lose, isn't it? Like that's the straight fire angle. So I think that's the real problem is, again, human nature. People are only looking at the game they've just seen. They're hyped in the moment. Again, I've always said, I don't know if it's autism, but I've just never got that, mate. I've never ever had that thing where I go to the cinema and watch like a really good movie, like an 8 out of 10 movie, and come out and go, it's the best movie I ever saw. I've never done that. That's why, in fact, here's how you know, right? I'm more on the level, motherfucker, than an actual level, like a spirit level, like checks what the level is. Think of this, right? The only time in my entire life I left the cinema and said that might be the best movie I've ever seen is my favourite movie. It was The Prestige. And I've been able to maintain that to this day. I never was on the hype for that. It just really was that good a movie. So unfortunately, other humans just don't seem to do that generally. They tend to just, it's because they get influenced by things like what do they wish was true? Or like, so a classic one that analysts get hyped up on is, believe it or not, a lot of those guys are jaded and burned out by the CSGO circuit. I never understood this because I can just essentially I'm just a sucker for punishment. I love just watching the same fucking top teams play over and over and over and over again. People like Yanko don't. That's why he went for a few years to just waste his time rolling boulders up hills and have them roll down again. He got tired of seeing Faze play Astralis and then having to talk about Faze versus Astralis next week and then Faze versus Astralis the week after that. So I love it personally, but when they hate that, the second the team comes along that shows a glimpse of what Gambit do, they get horny as shit. They're like, oh my God, this is like, they're like some degenerate who's like in his relationship, it's just gotten really fucking old for them. And then they're like, oh, wait a minute, what if I wore a GIMP outfit while I did? Like, they're just trying to find some fucked up kink to keep them going. They don't realise that really it's not about the teams, it's about their sort of internal battle to maintain interest in being an analyst. One thing I learned in short is most people aren't cut out to be lifers in esports. It's not really like, baseball, sports, whatever, tennis, whatever. Unfortunately, a lot of people aren't really here for that reason. A lot of people are here because it's cool to be an analyst, or it's cool to be famous, or it's nice to get some money, or I was a pro player, or it seems like it'll be a fun idea. So I always tell people that thing of like, follow your dreams. It's like, you don't know what your dreams are, motherfucker. You're just a guy with dreams. That's it. So it'll take you a while to figure out what your dreams are. You got to try it a bunch. You got to fail a bunch. You got to maybe even succeed before you know if it's your dream. So that's sort of a convoluted philosophical way, but does anyone else have any thoughts on analyst desk things? Maybe you've got some other angles than me.
I have a follow-up high-level question that flows from this and from previous discussion, which is when we get to LANs, 1 or 2, 3 tournaments in, there will be like 20 teams that think they need to be top 10. There will be like 10 teams that they need to be top 3. So does that mean that 3 LANs in, every team will have to take 2 or 3 people out of their lineup because, well, now it's real and we're not where we want to be? Like, there can only be 3 teams in the top 3, and there's at least 10 that think they should be there.
A short answer is probably yes. Like, I don't know if you know this. Actually, here's the thing. There's so many videos from these that I just never make, but I always say I should make. Like, another obvious one would be, because I'd have to give examples. If I could give examples, which I could, I just have to think up which angle and how to protect the identity of the person. I'll never, ever be able to overestimate for you how delusional pro players are. And even though an element of it is necessary, Like on some level, you have to believe you can win. That's very different from actually believing you are the best when you are a motherfucking scrub. And there are a lot of scrubs think they are amazing. Like, put it this way, maybe Pronogo can speak to this. I'm sure Pronogo knows a whole bunch of low invite or semi-pro NA pros who really believe, like, they should just be in Grim's spot or they should just be on Team Liquid or fucking, like Zeppish, you know, that should be my spot. Like, what would you say to that, Pronogo?
I would say the thing is, so what exactly is the question then, that the people who believe that are just, in terms of how delusional they are, like what you were saying, where they essentially just have complete overblown personal expectations, or they've misread.
Would you agree that like a lot of them basically sort of, they always think they're like if I had to give a random guess, everyone thinks they're sort of like 2 times better than they are?
Quixotic.
Yeah, that might even be like too generous. The thing is, it's almost always like targeted delusion, where some people have a realistic expectation of like, well, I couldn't be the IGL because that's just too difficult or whatever, but they'll definitely say that they could like frag out if I got all the resources Grim did, or so that kind of mentality is actually fairly common. I think maybe some of it is gone now because of it's really funny, and it actually underlines your point even further. The match fixers who have since sort of some of which at least have run off before the ESIC report comes out and bans them all. Those people were some of the most infatuated, like self-infatuated individuals at the space, despite the fact that I think by definition they realized they weren't going to do anything, which is why they were doing all the match fixing stuff, unless they were so delusional that they thought not only were they going to be super high level pro players, but they're also such masterminds they would never be caught. And unless like both of those delusions. I
think all of them thought they wouldn't be caught, by the way. Again, I don't know if you've ever known any criminals, but no criminal thinks he's getting caught. Not even because they're an idiot, by the way. It's like, here's the example, right? Okay. So there's 6 of us in this call. Speak up if you think you'll get cancer in your life.
I think there's a good possibility. My dad had colorectal cancer. He had 8 or 12 inches of his colon removed.
So there's one.
Quick enough that he didn't need chemo.
But I'll tell you what, if you actually look at the maths, I'm going to guess if we don't all die too soon, 2, 3 of us are going to get it? I mean, there's a whole separate aspect that like society's full of toxins that don't need to be there, but whatever. The point is, even if there's actually like a chance that we'd all want to be like, well, I hope I'm not the one. So can one of you speak up? Can one of you say, like, you know what I mean? Like, we all don't believe it because it's just such a horrible scenario. We don't want to believe it could be real. So sadly, I think all the match fixers actually thought they were going to get away with it. And by the way, they would have. Like, look at the lengths that these people have to go to catch them and actually like do anything about it. Like, part of the real reason as well why people like Richard and ESIC have to go so hard is because if you took an individual case like that to Valve, dude, I'd be amazed if they ever replied to the email. Or if they did, it'd be the equivalent of if you sent your script into Hollywood and they send that one back like, thank you for your script. Like, like you're fucking just a woman wrote that. The producer never saw it. She just signs his name at the bottom and then you just think, oh, fuck. Maybe next time,
I think a solid analogy is kind of the fact that like everybody's been a teenager and everybody has felt invincible.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not even a consciousness, for me anyway. I wasn't even like a conscious thought that, oh yeah, nothing bad will ever happen to me, because it is an absurd premise on its face. But viscerally, you do not feel like that.
No, of course not.
Because you haven't experienced it yet.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons, in my opinion, why people get destroyed by gambling. They really, really can't, but even though they know in certain scenarios when they're addicts that they're going to lose, they can't fully comprehend it because how can it happen to me? And even worse, this is the thing that movies do. I've made this point elsewhere in my content, but the worst thing about movies is this. The power of movies is that they'll take a truth and they'll sell you on it using the truth so that you feel like, oh, there's something to this. But then they'll subvert it at the last second and they'll make it into something fucked. So here's a classic thing. It's the idea that like, you're just a nobody in society. Nobody cares about you. You have no power, no agency. You can never succeed. You can never accomplish your dreams and all you want. But all of a sudden, you get superpowers, or an alien comes to you, or you get a time machine. What that's actually telling you is, everyone watching this, you're powerless, worthless, you'll never do anything unless something fictional that can't happen would happen to you. Good night. That's what they're telling you. Whereas what you would really tell the person in that scenario, it's what myth tries to tell you, but they subvert. The power was in you all along. You want to know something mental? A better fucking inspirational superhero story than any Marvel superhero story is Austin Powers 2. Because in it, he loses his mojo for real. He doesn't have his sexual charisma anymore. And at the end, he discovers it was all about attitude anyway, and he regains it, even though he never had any sort of like physical thing that gave him his mojo back. That's
You're always
actually
better
straight
off
fire.
if you be the person you are and end up with the powers anyways.
What's another angle then?
On the analysis discussion,
Yeah, we can do a bit more on that if people have thoughts.
I think the issue is, what are you like? Most people are on a desk, and this isn't just Counter-Strike. This is like most sports, because they've got knowledge in that sport. The thing is, analysis is its own field. Like, it's its own skill set. You need to level up. Like, you need to practice analysis on its own.
For sure.
So, like, I love just getting into new sports, partially because I enjoy building the framework that I need to analyze that sport on. And every sport I get into is faster to kind of build up that framework, because I've done it so many times at this point.
Yes.
But most people don't even build up that framework once. So there's not... It is easier to be pushed by individual results because they're experts in Counter-Strike. They're not experts in analysis.
I don't know if you guys all know, because again, I don't know how many you like follow League of Legends more than tangentially or just based on like seeing the headlines of my content. But a massive figure in League of Legends is a guy called LS, an American guy who lives in Korea, and he is famous, very famous as an analyst, particularly for having like not even just different, like totally out left field takes, like takes that everyone else just like collectively, like some sort of Mean Girls level shit. Like, you can't sit at our table, you fuck, you think a different thing than us. So basically, what people don't understand about this guy, and I'm going to do some content where I sort of go deep dive on his history and who he is and how he thinks, is he's like me. His first game wasn't League of Legends. He started in StarCraft Brood War, then he went into StarCraft 2, then he was doing like, I think, Heroes of the Storm, and at the same time playing Hearthstone and Magic the Gathering on the side. So when he comes to League of Legends, he's not only bringing over a totally different body of work and way and coherent philosophy on competition, metagames, but also, as long as he keeps some level of contact with those things, so in his case, it's mainly Magic the Gathering, he can even keep bringing things over. It's the same thing with me that people don't understand. The reason why I'm able to have like interesting takes on League of Legends, a game I can tell you right now, I don't vaguely understand on like the very, very deep level, beyond the fundamentals, is because Counter-Strike wasn't my first game. I was doing Quake, mate. I was doing Quake 1v1, a little bit of Team Deathmatch, and then later... I mean, it was like 2 years later, but at the time it felt like later. I came into Counter-Strike, and then I remember coming into Counter-Strike and being like, almost nothing applies here. But, oh, wait a second. No, that's not true. If I watch this guy who they say is the best, and this other guy who they say is his competition, I can sort of see mechanically where they're at in a way that the others don't. They just see who has the most frac. So some things applied, but I had to also have like a beginner's mind constantly and keep learning over. And I've done that all the time. One of the things people never give me credit for, I notice in CSGO analysis, is they'll do that stupid thing of like that. You remember when Reddit said that like Sponge stole their opinion or something? Right? Basically, when one of my analysts gives an amazing point and I think about it and I ask them questions maybe privately and I go and watch the demos, if they're right, I'll integrate some of that point into what I do, and I'll probably repeat part of it later on. Now, I'm also just good with my memory, so I'll often try and credit them if I do. But when I do that, an idiot will go, see, you just copied their opinion. It's like, no, actually, what I did was I took a guy who maybe isn't even a good analyst, who made a really great point, and I thought, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That point's amazing. Yeah, let's consider that. A lot of them can't do that. In fact, I'd even say probably the worst thing that happens to analysts is when they get to the top of the game, they really do think it's a dojo, and they're like it's the fucking, that classic Bruce Lee movie where he fights his way up the dojo, and at the top, it obviously is the ultimate boss, right? They think that's what it's like. It's like a linear progression. They don't get that. Like, mate, if you're the number one analyst now, and Maui Snake has some totally unique take, don't dismiss it because you think you're above him. Maybe his point on that one team's better than yours. Listen to him. If you're smart, it's like the Japanese say, no one's as smart as all of us. So there's always shit to be taken. Unfortunately, it's like you say, Andrew, analysis really is a skill set. It's the reason why I always tell people that, like, pro player, no pro player will ever beat me as an analyst. But you might think, well, wait a minute, some of them are analysts. No, they're people who put in years and years and years as analysts. And I saw them when they were in year one. And guess what? In year one, I was crossing over 360 donking in their faces unless I chose not to. Like, I don't think some of you guys know the fucking mercy like moments where I could have mercy killed them, but instead I gave them mercy to Yanko, Maniac. I give those people the leg up. I give them the soft treatment initially. I give them the occasional barb so they know, listen, that backhand's always there if you come for me, but I'll let you develop. If I wanted to go hard as fuck on day one, I could. It's why I said in that Counterpoints episode, you kinder, if you want to fuck around with analysts, mate, come see me. I'm your Huckleberry. I'm down for that. And it ain't going to go well for you, mate. It's going to end up bad. Because at the end of the day, you didn't just invent a new way of playing Counter-Strike. You're just exploiting some holes right now. So the real problem is, some of them also don't treat you like that. Like, they think it's all about they think knowledge is like a static thing that they've collected, like fucking Bitcoin or something, you know. Like, oh, I've got this knowledge. It's like, you haven't, mate. Like, it's constantly changing. Some of it's becoming irrelevant. You have to update it. You have to keep going. You have to sometimes update your technical skills. Like, one thing I'm so sick of, you probably know this from me moaning, is people on Reddit taking someone they just like the personality of and telling everyone they're the best caster analyst in the world. It's like, mate, some of these motherfuckers have no technical skills. Some of them, I'm not even joking, don't even know when to shut up because the host is literally signaling them under the table, stop, throw to me now. Some of those people, I have to sometimes go, anyway, and then cut it quick. Like, it's mental. Because as you say, like, being an ex-pro ain't enough, mate. That might get you through the door, but it ain't going to keep you there. I mean, I don't need to bring up examples. You all know the people who did like 2 events as a... I mean, even some of them were very legendary, but they just fucking sank, didn't they? They weren't the best.
Well, I think we saw that with, not to name names exactly, but I think recently a point that underlines this is Get Right being on the desk, where he was very dry and he didn't exactly know how to format. And I mean, in my own recent history right now, I've been trying to figure out just mastering the mechanical side of things, even though I'm not the best analyst, because if I can show up a better analyst in terms of presentation, then yeah, maybe I can, I'm not going to give the best content, but if I can deliver whatever content I can come up with in a better package, then that will still be a superior experience for the fan, even though obviously you are still missing something on the content side. If the guy who's got the best content of their opinions can't format them so that you can best receive them, then they're falling apart at a different level. They've actually, in my opinion anyway, they've fallen apart at an earlier hurdle that they may not even recognize as something that exists. And that is something that you'll see pretty frequently when people... I don't know if it's entitlement or what, but there is a sense amongst people that if they know the things that they know, and maybe this is what rubs people the wrong way about LS, even though I don't think that he's really expressed this in the same way. I do feel like some people think that because LS isn't a professional player, even though he's quite high ranked from what I remember and from when he did play, and because he comes from other games as well, that maybe that's obviously what informs his takes, but they use that almost as a way to discredit him, which is really confusing to me. It's like, oh yeah, you didn't come from League of Legends, or oh this is why you have all of these like crazy takes that are just backwards. Even though for what little of League that I do keep following these days, I'm pretty sure he's responsible for some pretty obvious like shifts in people's thinking at a professional level about the game as an esport, as a competition. And you don't get like that by just happening into it like by luck or whatever. Like there's a reason why coming from another game or mastering some aspect of presentation before you even start to try to put together complex points can actually be of great benefit to you.
I'm sure people in this call are aware, because you're all from CSGO, that like Get Right is a literal friend of mine for like a decade or more now. Put it this way, you didn't see any fanfare from me on Twitter or by the numbers like, oh, this is going to be incredible, oh, I can't wait. Like, because I knew he was coming in as a tourist. He just wanted to come in and do a couple of events because it would be fun, and because he was offered, and because it has a nice paycheck. By the way, perfectly fine. You don't blame the person taking the job offer. You blame the motherfucker who offered him the job. And yeah, of course, a bunch of morons went, but he's won majors. He must be, this will be awesome. It's like, you know what? Let's see if you guys would listen to him for 3 years. Because here's the thing, Get Right's probably the best example, because if he actually wanted to be an amazing analyst, he has an incredible work ethic. I bet he could probably do it. And there's not many pros I would say that about. But if he's only coming in to take what he currently has as a perspective and do some of it on a desk, then I need some really good people around him.
Well, showmanship is a different skill set to then analysis and game knowledge. And so that's the problem I think ESL's desk had, is that it had Yanko hard carrying on the showmanship side.
Which says a lot, doesn't it? There's some development for you boys.
And then you've got like Kassad and Get Right when they were paired together. It's like, oh please, like having one of them, like you guys need to learn at some point. So you can't just never put them on a desk because they don't know showmanship.
Of course.
Yet. But like having two people who are still trying to learn the showmanship side at the same time, I think that was just ludicrous. Like
now think of this. Now ask yourself, in a world where ESL thinks that's a good desk, hires those people for top day rates, puts it on, and has fans generally say it's good, why would they ever hire me back like they did? Why would companies ever come to me again? It's never out of desperation, boys. It's because my product is worth something. So even though they don't actually acknowledge it, like here's the real secret people don't know. Shit like Twitter and Reddit is why motherfuckers like ESL think they have to hire me. Because I also know how the game is played. I know how media works. So I can make it seem like this is a very attractive prospect and that if you do this, you're going to get X or Y. I don't say it, it's inferred. But if you actually just ask these people to sit down like a talent contest, like this is like, American Idol or something, you wouldn't believe how trash the TO hiring people would be at seeing talent. Like they would take like fucking the guy who can barely hold a note and be like, oh, incredible. Yeah, I'm going to put you through the next round. And then some guy who's like, fucking just like not good looking, but he's like amazing singer. They'd be like, oh, not really feeling it for me. I don't know if there was enough soul in it for, your rendition. You picked a very hard song. Like they would be so bad you wouldn't believe it. It's why, if you notice, my trend is at the moment going completely different to my friend Monte Cristo's. But because we're friends, we're going to be in this very unique sort of like odd couple relationship going forwards because he still believes that you fix the system from within. I personally believe that the system is intentionally created corrupt to save money, essentially. And so people to save money go for the 70% option versus the 100% that costs twice as much. So they go, I'll take the 70%, still 70% right. And what you don't realize is you've just opted into never having excellence. And so you end up hiring someone who themselves wasn't the best in that field. And so who do you think he hires? Well, just out of incompetence, he's going to hire people who aren't the best of themselves. In fact, here's the maddest one of all. And this is a fucking mad, juicy bomb. Because I can sort of infer who these people are without saying who they are. Think of the sorts of people who were hiring talent when I first became talent. I've told this story in the past. I was told to my face by put it this way, dozens of people who will be in esports halls of fame one day that I will never be an on-camera personality. I have no personality. I have no showmanship. All I have is I'm a nerd who watched all the games because believe it or not, back then I was the Yanko and that's all I have. And so forget it. You're not going to make it. Just quit now. That's what they straight up told me. And they also said, and even if we did hire you, would never pay you the most, that you'll just get the bottom rate. Now, the reason why is because those were also people where, guess what? If they themselves aren't secure in how good they are at their job, and they used to do my job, well, they're not good. It's like Richard's point about Blade and Zeus and Boomich. Like, the reason his premise is he thinks Zeus cynically recruited Boomich because he knew he wouldn't be as great in IGL. That's kind of what some of these TOs do, believe it or not. Like, they don't like it when you get really good unless you kiss the ring. Like half the caster fallouts are because some guy is the new hot shit. Now, to be fair, all the ones that are the hot shit are usually so stupid they do just step on everyone's toes and shit where they eat. But sometimes they're not that bad. Like they're just I'll give you the analogy. I guess I should shift it and make it about journalists. DK is the ultimate person who smoked out all the retards in the esports industry because all the people who came at DK showed they were just jealous that he was legit as fuck and incredibly competent and became successful exponentially. There was nothing to dislike about this guy. He never put a foot wrong in terms of a moral sense. He was incredibly professional, even in a world that wasn't his profession initially. So when you look, think of the journalists who called him out, who were salty about him, who were on Discords where everyone spams racist jokes, saying horrible things about him. Those are people just screaming, here are all my insecurities. I'm just going to put them on Front Street, but I'm just going to cross out my name and put DK out the front. Anyone want to take this shit? There's a lot of people like that.
Realistically, people are always afraid of the things that they don't understand, and they are always afraid of the things that are threatening them. If they put so much of their platform towards talking down to a particular person or somebody in a particular position, and then they succeed, that person that was talking down to them was forced to admit that A, they were underperforming, B, they were clueless, and C, there is now somebody better than them willing to replace them. And I feel like this is reaching back like 5 minutes to the pundits and the analyst desks. People just in general, especially in the US, have difficulty understanding that you're allowed to bring in new information that you weren't aware of before, form new opinions, and then step onto that platform. And I feel like they're too prideful to admit that they were wrong in the first place and, you know, move forward from that point.
Here's an angle you might not be aware of. I'm sure some of you are smart enough to intuit it. People think I'm doing that when I wreck people on Twitter. Have you noticed, by the way, how part of how society keeps you from actually being yourself is people just pull imaginary rules out of their arse, pin them to the wall, and then repeat them a million times. So, for example, whoever told someone, like, unless you can explain it to a 5-year-old, you don't understand it, right? Well, you are aware, by that logic, almost no mathematics exists.
Yep.
That's over. It's game over. Because that's only like a general principle that maybe applies certain. And by the way, you notice there's never a fucking quote with that. I don't know who said that. There's no like, that wasn't said by Plato. Like, it's just some fucking guy said it and everyone keeps repeating it. Well, here's what people don't realize. Haters try to tell me I do that. So the obvious example would be Issa right now, right? Or maybe Jacob Wolf or the CIS people. They'll go, wow, by that logic, Thorin, they must actually be above you and they're threatening you. No, because think about it, right? I don't just sit there and wake up one day and go, Jacob Wolf is an ugly fucking moron. Someone comes at me and they try, if you notice, I should stop telling people that when you come, you've got to try and actually kill me instead of just taking me out, because they are trying to kill me. They just don't have the weapons to do it, right? They come at me and they don't just say, I don't like you, I disagree, you're an idiot. They'll come at me and they'll try and wound me. They'll be like, you're not a real journalist, or you're a liar, or you're just saying that for this reason. Well, guess what? In that scenario, what I do, this is my tactic. They can all listen because they're not smart enough to employ the game theory that I'm talking about. What I've always taught people is this. I used scorchers as an actual tactic. I've said it in the past. It's like the fucking Untouchables. If you bring a knife, I bring a gun. If you put me in the hospital, I put you in the morgue. I teach everyone in the esports industry, my reprisal will be magnitudes greater than yours. So your only chance is don't start shit in the first place. And if you think a lot of them haven't realised that, I would just say go and look. Do you see ESL say things about me publicly? Does Carmack say things about me publicly? No, they don't. That German guy does on Twitter because he just doesn't know what's good for him. And by the way, internally people tell him to shut the fuck up on a regular basis. But a lot of the people in the esports, a lot of people in the industry have learned the lesson now. Like, don't come at me, mate, because if you want war, I'm built for that shit. It's a different scenario, but you get the premise. I thought I'd just clarify that in case people were interested. What do we want to swap to now? Let me see.
Somebody else asked something.
Yeah. What about? Do you have a question, Laggy?
Another question. I got a statement. I want to see a
Let's do it.
reaction.
Uh-oh.
G2 announcing Nico as the main AWPer is a brilliant move.
Okay, give me some reasons.
No, I want to see the reactions first because. Okay, no, I'm gonna take this now.
Oh, wait a second.
That's my reaction.
Wait a minute. As in, you want all of us to react, not just me.
Yeah, all.
All right. In that case, yeah, good setup. Let's see what everyone else thinks, and then, because by the way, Lag is actually figuring out the game now. If you have a really unique take, don't just fucking lead with it, and then because listen, not just people in this chat, in life, half of them will go, yeah, I always thought that as well. So they never thought until that second. So go on, everyone, give us their thoughts who wants to. Give us some thoughts on Nico as an AWPer.
Oh, wait. What I said was the announcement of Nico as the main AWPer.
You're sort of giving away the game there, but fair enough. The rest of them might not pick up on it. Okay, what do you think about that? So I'll actually ask people in order. Right, Andrew, what do you think of the statement that the announcement, you probably shouldn't have emphasised that so much, I know what you mean now, but the announcement of Nico as the AWPer of G2 is a great idea or something, or a great announcement. What do you think?
Well, I suppose that all rests on what they do next, right? Like, surely that's the kind of, the idea that the announcement was great rests on the idea that they've got some great AWPer in like 3 months' time, so that you could switch away from Nico and be like the Fallen kind
So
of.
it's a PR tactic, basically, right?
Yeah, but if they don't have anything to follow up, and it is just he's the AWPer forever, then it's the worst thing ever, right? Like,
Okay. Does anyone else have a different take?
I guess based on the announcement, considering what they're telegraphing, I personally just Nico being op. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think he's too multi-talented for that, but I don't know that I agree with them locking him into a particular role, I guess, is my main thing from announcing that.
If Nico was not on the G2 roster, the announcement would have been, we are kicking Kenny S. And there would have been a pretty big uproar about this. But instead, they cloaked it by saying, we have Nico primary opping. And while there's a lot of people who would go to bat for Kenny S, there's also a lot of people who would go to bat for Nico, at least fans in terms of that. And
and in the industry as well, for sure.
Yeah, fair enough, but not as a primary opper when he's been away from that specific role for so long. They wouldn't doubt that he could pick it back up, but as a short-term move, that's what people were infatuated with. That's what you saw all the discussions about, especially when he then goes and completely bombs in the first game. Whereas I didn't see nearly as much discussion about where does Kenny S go? Is it a good move to remove Kenny S? There were some, like I even asked Thorin about this on Elo Heaven because I knew he would have some thoughts on this. And of course it was discussed on By the Numbers. But widely speaking, again, with people outside of this call and it's people outside of like those immediately connected, there really wasn't that much discussion about the Kenny S thing. Whereas I think if they didn't have something to announce that would have distracted everybody, you'd probably would have had a lot more shade thrown at the org for losing what might be like, it's certainly one of the best oppers, what might end up being like top 3 oppers of the entire game, depending on how the rest of his career plans out.
Yeah, thank you for catching me up on the nuance of that. I had forgotten. I had seen the announcement that Kenny S was getting benched and wondered why, but that connects the dots. Thank you.
I feel like though that Kenny S is one of those players who's got an unlucky kind of perception in that it's actually like a worse version of what happens to JW. In that whenever he's good and then he drops off, like the day after he's dropped off, people go, oh, Kenny S hasn't been good since 2014. Like,
for sure.
Whereas
Goes
like
back to the day trading.
It's always like, oh, JW hasn't been good since 2014. It's like, wait, no, he was good like 4 months ago. Like, yeah, he's not the player maybe we wish he was. But
I guarantee you the people who are saying that about Kenny S didn't even watch during 2014, man. I'm just going to throw that one out there.
That's the thing is that they...
What year was the Titan 50 bomb?
For some reason, though, certain players have like this idea that they're always bad, and as soon as they stop being good, the default storyline reverts to that. And I've noticed that Kenny S always has that. So I think as soon as it's easier to drop Kenny S for some unknown reason than it should be.
Which is wild, because if you think about it, the idea that people want to believe in Freiburg but not Kenny S, it's like, what the fuck even is this? Like these are magnitudes of difference. The thing is, I can't claim completely Kenny S because, for example, JW wasn't really one of my boys, but it definitely doesn't help if we're talking about Reddit opinions, if they were anyone they know I rate. Because, mate, I actually genuinely believe, this might sound egotistical, I don't believe, aside from the fact he didn't win the major, I don't believe Carrigan would get assaulted like 24/7 with this like stupid ass logic that like he's like mad overrated or whatever. I don't think that would exist if I hadn't sort of like gone to bat so hard for him in like the downtimes, you know? I think people just it sounds mad, but if you've ever followed League of Legends, you'll know this is real. People think to themselves, like they think they're owning me with just, their tweets, their comments, but the real reason you know that they don't actually believe it in their heart is if they really were owning me, then okay, problem solved, I'm owned, they just move on. But they always have to try and think, oh, you like a certain player, so everyone knows it was Device. And it's funny now because everyone now is going to claim it wasn't Device, but it was until basically like the end of 2018. They go, oh, that's his favourite player. Let's just say he sucks when he doesn't. That'll hurt his feelings. So then they just go with that like whack angle as long as they can. But the same people, you can try this yourself. Download a program called RES, Reddit editing suite or something, and enhancement suite. And basically it lets you tag people's Reddit accounts so that when they post on Reddit, it'll have a little tag next to their name. All you do is you just take the people in the thread where they're like, I always thought it was trash in 2014. You put Kenny S trash since 2014. Now just enjoy the rest of your time viewing Reddit. 2 years later, Kenny S will win an MVP for a tournament, and that guy will be like, of course, Kenny's great. Top 2 AWP of all time. You know, like, you can't beat these people. Like, they literally do the Cloud9 fucking... I just say that because it's the most famous example. They do the fucking Homer Simpson into the bush where they just come back out with a different jersey on. Like, you can't beat that thinking, can you? The joke is, I can't do that. I have to keep the same scenarios, or I have to explain why I changed it. I can't... I don't have the same mobility in that regard, do I?
What a
Yeah,
freaking
anyway,
burden
so
it is to
irrelevant.
have to consider the fundamentals.
So, Lagger, come on then. I think they've already like, the real problem there is you should have just let them straight up, like, respond. But whatever, they've sort of cut your steam out there. So give us the angle.
Would you consider that Nico is the main opener in G2?
Not for long. They got.
I mean, I don't, because he doesn't use it right now.
Like,
Yeah,
for the past
not really. Not really. By the way, using the AWP on CT side doesn't even count as main AWP, in my opinion.
No, and he's only opening it up when he wants to. Not when he can or when he has to, but when he wants to. So the
So
announcement...
only main op in the sense that he uses it more than everybody else.
But he isn't. Amanek uses it as much as he does.
Forget main, just say primary AWP, because the idea there is it's your primary weapon. It's just the easiest way to say it, isn't it? Yeah.
But the thing is, by announcing him as the main AWPer or primary AWPer, he can pick it up whenever he wants, and he will become a star. Either he has an AWP or not, and they just like, yeah, he's a star player. He's the most versatile player, maybe in the world of the simple.
Sure.
So, no way can G2 lose by saying that he is the main AWPer, because he doesn't even have to pick up the AWP.
Oh, it's very smart PR for sure.
Because right now they also have Amanek, who is a decent to a good AWPer.
Yep, he was a hybrid as well. Yeah,
that can play the JDM role. And here's the best part: he doesn't have to get the JDM tag to it. Like, you are the supportive AWPer. You get the freebie of being the JDM of a greater team.
Sure.
So I think it's a great from G2.
In terms of PR,
they have two AWPers who share the responsibility, but none of them will get downfall. Or
the problem with that is this, mate. That is like a pact. That is a Faustian pact with the devil, because first of all, it's dishonest, and secondly, more importantly, like all Faustian bargains, it only works out in the short term. So in the short term, you're right. For PR, it's awesome. Here's why it isn't very good. Unless they really do get a true primary AWPer who is elite, the team will either just be a very good rifle team, in which case they'll just be mocked for those stupid statements eventually, it'll become a meme, or they will eventually fail, and even worse, you'll have let someone like Nico pretend to be an AWPer. And the reason why that's criminal to me is, in my opinion, AWPer, main star player of a team, and IGL are the three roles where you should have all the pressure on you if you're in a top 5 team in the world, or a team that's projected to be top 5. Like, if you're an IGL and you're like, oh, all this pressure that I have to lead these greatest players in the world to win the major, that's too much for me. Get the fuck out the door. We don't need you. You'll never make it. Like, basically, in that scenario, you're the guy where I need to test you from day one, because I'm not going to get on the battlefield and find out you just piss your pants and drop your gun and now I'm getting killed by the enemy. Like, I've got to test you from the day one up. So if Nico, and by the way, one of the things, if you want to, here's an example of PR, if we're all putting all our cards on the table. Haven't you noticed how when I've been going hard as fuck at Nico, he can't handle it? It literally tilts him. A guy who otherwise is a fantastic player, doesn't care what other players say about him, what his peers say about him, what analysts say about him. But tell you what, when I say something, it fucking burns. It stings. All of a sudden, all his boys have to come out. That's because I'm showing, look, Nico, I've always said you had certain problems, mate. I'm gonna basically illustrate them in a different medium. I'm going to show that you have a delusional perception of yourself, that you get wounded by obviously correct statements but you can't acknowledge as correct because you're surrounded by yes men. It's basically the same thing, if people don't know, that I did with Issa when I was at Flashpoint 2 in that interview. I thought up a scenario in which, without overtly saying to the guy's face, shut the fuck up talking when Alexi B talks, I could just show that this motherfucker doesn't and he isn't listening. And I did it. I thought it was one of the... It's how I know people on Reddit are not thinkers. They're low IQ morons. It's all lowest common denominator. Because that interview was straight fire. It was incredible. I literally got to the very core of exactly what I was trying to point out about the guy. And everyone missed it, including his own team, by the way. Like, if you want to know something... Here's some juice for you. Some OG players get it. Some of them get it. some of them, including some of the ones you'd hope, don't get it. Some of them really did think Issa was legit. Some of them really did believe some of the things they said. So, yeah, in that scenario, like, I basically, if NiKo wants to be a primary AWPer, and on some level, part of me thinks he's egotistical enough he believes he can, you should have all the pressure of having a beak NES then. You're trying to step in the man's shoes. If you don't want that, get out of the way and let someone else take that turn. Because I tell you what, Cirque, fucking a million tier 2 AWPers who might have the talent, they'll take that pressure tomorrow. So give them their shot. Like, they basically, if you haven't noticed, the trend I'm going to keep following is anyone who thinks they're CSGO royalty and can just go around without anyone saying, you know, Emperor, you actually have no clothes on. They're in for a bad time because I am the little kid telling everyone they haven't got the clothes on, mate.
Realistically, G2 puts himself in a situation where they have 2 people capable of opping, and as soon as opping is a weak point in their game, the only thing that benefits Amanek and Kenny S is that they're each getting 50% of the blame.
NiKo, but yeah.
Yeah, my bad. But it's just, Nico, I have always felt that if he's not in a situation where everybody agrees with what he's doing, he's not going to perform.
By the way, Zach,
I lean on the egotistical aspect.
Are you Asian American, mate?
No. I am Caucasian as hell.
Fair enough. You're just very polite then in that case.
Well, I live in Michigan, so I'm pretty damn close to Canada.
I was just about
Fair enough. You know, by the way, I've made this rant on past episodes. That's probably the stupidest thing about your country that people who don't live there don't know. They all believe all that jazz in the media, you know, that like the best places to be is like LA and New York and that everything else is like a dog shit flyover. Basically. They don't realize if you actually want to meet real humans who have real human values, those are the places to go.
Yeah, like, and funnily enough, I lived in California for 14 years of my life. I was Southern California. I went to a middle school with 90% Hispanic kids, and they were great. I was an honorary Mexican. Absolutely not a racist bone in my body. But coming out here, in California, I used to see other Caucasians and be surprised. But coming out here, just everybody is friendly. Everybody is open. Everybody's happy. And I don't have to worry about a thing.
Sure. Right. Is there anything more than equal angle, Lagger?
No, that's fine.
All right. Right. What's the next topic then? What we're going to now?
I wanted to ask you your opinion. Oh, actually, go ahead, Andrew, because I've asked already.
Okay, I wanted to talk about I find rivalries in esports, and I've not followed all esports, but in esports I've followed to be so underwhelming. Like,
give us an example.
Like when I started following Counter-Strike in 2016, and the rivalry that had like the most kind of, I don't know, spice to it at the time was Astralis versus Fnatic. And like, you know, Carrigan like did the pause before they won, beat the major and whatnot, and like it was really cool. That rivalry, no one cared about that rivalry, even when 6 of the players were still the same. Like, the rivalries are so underwhelming. Like, another one I find ridiculous is...
Give us a contrast, though, because are you coming from, like, your sports background and the idea that, like for example, in teams, like, NFL's a good example, they could change nearly all the players except, you know, 1 or 2, and, you know, like, still, like, you know, in theory, like, the Ravens and the fucking Steelers or whatever hate each other, you know, whatever, pick whichever classic you want. Is it more like that angle?
Yeah, so, like, the thing, like, you know, I come from Australia, so the Ashes is, like, astronomically big as a rivalry.
Yes, I actually think CSGO people don't realise that. That's why they were trying to do it on those IEM cities, if you don't know.
That's one of the things that was so, like, really clever about it. You just call it the Ashes and have, like, Henry G, and there we go. The whole crowd is into it. The whole crowd is so invested in that rivalry.
Tell you what, though, by the way, that is one of the angles where I've always said this. Maybe today's the day to say it, like the fact that some of those clips are out there. Those TOs are so stupid for not asking me to be on those show matches. Now, don't worry. I didn't want to be on them. I don't want to fucking get up on Sunday morning after everyone's been partying on Saturday night. I'd rather just chill till 5 when the fucking final is. But if people don't know, I've always said this. I don't claim to be good at Counter-Strike, but I'll go for every fucking no-scope, knife, fucking like ballsy 1v3. Like, I would have torn those show matches up. And if you can only imagine what I would be like if I went to Sydney, because by the way, mate, I'd like rock up in a full like Union Jack suit or something, mate. Like, I'd go fucking ham and they'd hate me. It'd be awesome. And they'd have an awesome time hating me. That'd be the whole point. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, like the audience.
Who watches
really
cricket
enjoyed,
though?
The audience really loved hating on Henry. Like, and everyone in the audience, and that's the thing that I think is great about the Ashes rivalry.
Henry loved the audience hating on Henry.
A bit. Unfortunately, Henry actually got his feelings hurt by it, believe it or not.
Oh, no.
Everyone in the audience sees it as a game because no one.
Yes,
actually
of course.
hates the UK.
It's like the WWE. Of course, you hit on the heel. Yeah, of
It's a
course.
performance.
It's not like Brazil versus Argentina where there's genuine animosity. It's like, no, we like each other. It's just the rivalry is really hype. But like,
okay, like bring it back to esports then.
So like a rivalry that I feel like should be really epic is like Liquid EG.
Of course.
But when they play each other, it's like, oh well, EG got the better of them like 2 months ago. It's like, what? These are two of the most storied orgs in esports, and yet we're not going to reference anything that happened like before 2020. Like, I just find it so.
I mean, this is my bag right now, Andrew, because let's face it, narratives are my shit. So the real problem there, I mean, you might have guessed this if you saw any of the stuff I did with Flashpoint, is that's probably the area that TOs are the most lacking in because they literally do not care. Like, I'm not joking. The reason why TOs, if you notice, the only narratives I call out from TOs are the super boneheaded ones. So I'll give you an example. When that fucking Ulrich guy was talking about how if Virtus Pro with Kazakhstani players won IEM Katowice, they would receive the trophy they had won in 2014. You are mentally ill.
What?
Nothing about that makes any sense. That's not even a narrative. It's like you promised you'd come up with an amazing narrative for Virtus Pro, and then when your boss started heading towards your cubicle, you were like, "Fuck, I didn't do it." Oh shit! Wait a second. Virtus Pro. Google Virtus Pro. They won EMS 124. Yeah, it's gonna be like when they won that trophy boss, right? Even a writer's room with half an hour comes up with 10 times better story than that. 10 times better story. They didn't. They were just fools. So basically the problem is TOs not only don't care about that, but because they don't care, they put no effort and no money into it. Like I've told this story before. I could have been doing things like that Flashpoint playoffs trailer from about 6 years ago, mate. But when I would offer it to TOs, all they would let me do is a 2-minute video for a team in which I have to hit certain points and then they just edit it however the fuck they want once it leaves my hands. And they would even say, like, I would even have, like, this is why people don't realize some of those, like, intros I did for events, like, that were just, like, when they were coming to the stage, those are actually God tier. If you know, I was told they're allowed to be 2 sentences long. I had to be so economical. I had to, like, fucking, like, use, like, Hemingway's iceberg theory of, like, imply something without overtly saying it. That's why when I used to do it, right, and I'd reference, like, 2-star players, I would get some dickhead pro, like, why didn't you mention me, though? It's like, it wasn't a fucking Oscar acceptance speech, mate. I had 2 sentences. You're the fucking shit support player who I want cut. I'm not going to reference you in that, am I? Like, how would I reference you to hype everyone up? So basically, yeah, they don't get it. And the reason why it's mental is they still don't get to this day. That is the marketing for your event. The marketing for your event isn't when you put up posters all around Cologne saying ESL1 Cologne coming August, like buy your tickets. That's like a different type of marketing. In esports, the marketing is the storyline of the tournament because the storyline will make you tune in for a match that you have no business watching. The best example ever would be this. You brought up 2016, right? 2015 and 2016 were also the years where TSM/Astralis was way better than Ninjas in Pajamas. But if you were an Astralis fan, you were fucking scared when they played Ninjas in Pajamas because you knew the players were scared. Now, they never set that up properly. They never made that make sense. They either made both teams sound equally as good, because they always used to pretend Nip was good like 3 years after the fact, or they would be like, oh my God, an underdog win, like never even bringing into account the real narrative that was there and again was present from years past with those cores. So unfortunately, they just don't understand that this is literally how you take your product and make it even more appealing, even more meaningful, even more compelling, and you draw people into watching it. They don't get it, unfortunately. And unfortunately, in this case, like I said from before, I originally thought, no problem, I will join a TO. I will do this. I will show everyone. Well, fat chance of that working out, didn't it? So now I have to just go and do my own shit, don't I? Don't worry though, I'll give you a little spoiler. One thing I will be doing in the future, might not be on my channel, probably on some other channel, maybe a different company will appear at some point. I am just going to do their fucking job for them. When there's an IM Katowice, I'll do the playoff hype video, I'll make all the money from it, I'll have sponsors on my shit, and then you'll see how it could be done. Basically, if you don't know, there's a classic style in battle rap. It's one of the most gangster things you can do, which is you tell the other guy, your style sucks for reasons X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to prove it by doing your style better than you, and you just wreck them with it. Like, you make better personal jokes about them. You do better rhyming schemes than them. You show them different, like, technical ability that they only have, like, you know, they do a simple A, B, A, B, A, B. You do, like, an A, A, B, A, A, B, 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 A, A, B, B. You just show them, like, you show them up completely. So that's what I'm going to do. If it's ESL, do the TOs, blast. If it's fucking the score Esports, if it's other journalists, if it's even TO, I'm just going to show them up directly. I'm not going to tell them what they do wrong. I'm just going to show you.
Don't you think that this is actually related in large part, in fact, to the conversation we had earlier about stoicism and how, like, this is obviously before we even started recording, but we were talking about how if you realize that everything is fucked, then the only solution is to figure out what you can do to make a better alternative, or just to set your own world and room in order, so to speak. And it's almost going back to that, like, old Jordan Peterson stuff where he mentions that, like, you have to set your room in order or your house in order before you take on the world. It's kind of, in my opinion, it's very similar to what you're talking about now. And, like, you're basically making the observation that you've tried to work within the system, but you realize the only realization that you've gained from that is that you have to build your own system in order to work at all. In order for
a rule of the esports industry, and this will help you, Pranogo, is never ask permission, just do it.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense.
So, for example, there's 1 million people out there, by the way, half of them are on desks, mate, who I would get together, I'd go to the event, you know, I would go to 1 out of every 4 events because I'd have time doing other stuff. And when I would talk to them, if the topic of my YouTube channel came up, they would go, I really need to do something with my YouTube channel. And then they'd never do it, right? Or they'd do 1 video every 6 months. Right, if they'd even just done your style of video, super scuffed, like low production value, like you're getting whoever you can initially, you're just doing what you can. By the way, they'd have already had more resources, remember, from day one. Like they're already like a famous person and stuff. Like if they'd have even done that, yeah, it might have sucked for the first 3 months or 6 months, or maybe it'd take a year before they feel comfortable. But they would now, forget now, half a decade ago, have been in an amazing position in their career. They'd have had so much mobility and agency, but they didn't. Instead, what they did is, I can tell you right now, they've said it on shows. They went to the TOs, they went to the people with money, and they said, I've got a great idea for a documentary. Like, I need it, but I need $50,000 to do it. No motherfucker's going to give you. It's like these guys don't know what the real world is. In the real world, you go and pitch someone for a movie or whatever and just tell them the basic premise. You think they just give you millions of dollars? Of course not. You have to work your way up through the system. So what you do is you just use whatever you have. Obviously, if people have seen my channel, they'll know this is my ethos. If I don't have like graphic stuff, then I just don't have graphic stuff for the beginning. I'll just do it today. And then I'll have some scuffed graphics, and I'll have some slightly better graphics, and then eventually I might have an edit, and then eventually I might have a thumbnail. Like, I can worry about the details and the small things later. You've got to start now, though. There's even an angle, by the way. I'll give you a little hint here, because this is mainly for League of Legends. But who knows, maybe I'll fuck around and do it in CSGO if I get the right premise for it. Because I'm so sick of having these discussions every year in League of Legends of how we make the LCS broadcast better, I've got a spoiler for you. I'm probably just going to do my own post-show analysis desk for that as well. And man will just run on my own channel, won't have any of their footage, and it'll just be a real panel of people discussing the game that just happened, or group of people breaking down the day's play, etc. And again, I'll just show these fuckers up. And the best part is, because I won't even use game footage if it's on my channel, depends on what channel it's on, they can't even take my shit down. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm just talking.
Drawback is you have to watch League of Legends.
I mean, I already do that anyway, so don't worry about that.
Yeah. It's just a joke.
I feel like I get frustrated that there's, with the rivalries thing, that it's this really obvious side to hype the games that is being missed. Like, if people don't understand like the English kind of rivalries thing, in soccer, teams won't even be in the same division for a long time. Like Man City and Man United, Man City were relegated, but they're still rivals. Like that's the thing I find so disappointing about like the Fnatic Astralis one. As soon as Fnatic were no longer number one, they were like, oh, I don't want to be rivals anymore. Like, you know, like we don't want to do trash talk. It's like, that's not how it works. Like England didn't hold the Ashes for like 16 years. They got wrecked every single time. But it just made it more epic when they eventually won. And like the 2005 Ashes.
I've got a good one for you, mate. Right. I don't know how much anyone here follows the NBA, but it's actually a pretty like simple one. You don't have to know a deep knowledge of this. Right. So here's a mad one that a lot of you won't know. Because when Kobe Bryant was playing for the Lakers in 2006 and 2007, the teams they had were like teams that basically, it was like when like Nico was on Mouse Sports. Like they had no business being in the playoffs. And to even get to the playoffs, like the star player had to play like probably like twice as good as the other star player or 1.5 times better. And he was doing it, right? But because both years, the team they lost to was the Phoenix Suns, who at the time were like far and away one of the best teams in the NBA. They were probably like the third best or second best team in the NBA at the time. Like amazing like offense that you just basically, you couldn't outproduce them. And that was the problem. You just weren't going to beat them unless you had either sick defense or an equally good offense. Or it was the conference finals. Basically, when this team was going through that shit and Kobe lost twice to this team, years later, he played them in the 2010 conference finals, right? And at this point in time, dude, if you go look at the roster, maybe like a third of the roster's the same. Even one of the main stars, I think, I can't remember if he'd already gone at that point in time. He might have gone the next year, actually. A whole bunch of them like weren't even there, the people who beat him. But his whole thing was, no joke, because you beat me twice in the playoffs, I will never let you win. And it was the same thing apparently with the Nuggets. There was some issue he had with, I think it was like George Karl or something like. And so again, oh, that was it. I remember the story now. There was another angle to it. Same thing with the Denver Nuggets. In the 1998 All-Star game, this is a detail a lot of people didn't know until recently, George Karl was the coach of the Western team because he coached the Sonics at the time. And famously, this is the game where Kobe Bryant was an all-star, even though he was a starter, was a bench player for the Lakers, right? And in the all-star game, if you saw The Last Dance, you know this, he was trying to go one-on-one with Michael Jordan, who at the time was like the greatest basketball player in the world, and with the MVP, just going head-to-head with him. So what George Karl did is, because he didn't want that to be the story of the whole show, he just sat him in the fourth quarter and didn't let him play at all. And so Kobe literally said in an interview, every time I ever played the Nuggets, even if they were like the 8th seed and I'm the 1 seed, I'm going to crush them, all their hopes and dreams, so that he can never beat me. And he will always think in his mind, well, he'll know what I did to piss him off. You have to think, what did I do? Like, that's a real thing. The problem is, though, unfortunately, if you want to go on the player side of this, I thought we were going for the broadcast side, but if you want to go for player side, where they abandon... Players are whack in that sense, because players are little bitches. Remember, most of them are like 18-year-old kids. They don't get that that's actually amazing. And by the way, most of them aren't great human beings. Like they to have a, basically, if people don't understand, if you're Kobe Bryant there's actually no logical reason you give a fuck about the Denver Nuggets anymore. Like the Denver Nuggets were the team that George Karl coached, by the way, I should have clarified that later in his career. They were never, ever, except for one season, as good as the Lakers, right? So aside from that one season, realistically, you should just think that's not even really the same team. They're a low-level team. I'm going to beat them anyway. But what these people like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, what they do on purpose is for the game where you don't feel like really getting up and playing 10 out of 10, for the game where your back's acting up, for the game where it's like, you know what, we won the last 4 games, who gives a fuck if we lose this one? That's the game that you reach deep and you go, but I fucking hate that guy. You find a reason to make yourself play better. That's like an element of greatness. So unfortunately, I've just got to tell you, mate, it's not in most of these people. I'll even say, that's one of the reasons actually why, as bizarre as it sounds, if we take like Prime Fanatics, it wasn't really Prime one because it was the one where they had Dennis, but the one where they still had most of the classic core, Olaf Meister Krims, Dennis, JW, obviously Dennis wasn't the one, he was the Ploronax before, and Flusher, right? In this core, as mad as it sounds, I think the only 2 that understand what we're talking about is JW and Flusher. Krims and Olaf don't give a flying fuck, mate. They're just nice guys who are just like, whatever, we won the match. Flusher's just like a troll who's trying to make you tilted every time you play him. And JW's whole shit is he would actually trash talk. So basically the problem is most of the players just don't want that smoke, mate. They're not about that. Like, I used to think it was so whack when Astralis and VP had that real rivalry in early 2017. And the Astralis players tried to downplay the rivalry because they were scared of them. What the fuck is that? It's just what happens, you know.
The reason I like kind of talk like both the player side and the teams, like the broadcast side, is like people like Richard will say, oh, well, we don't follow teams in esports, we follow the players. But it's like the thing, we don't get the rivalries from the players, which is where apparently that's what people follow. So if we don't get the players, we need to get them from the teams. Like, we can't get them from nowhere. I get you, but I also think that's also, it's actually, if you watch, I know you can't watch it because I just released it now, but if you watch the new AMA I did, I referenced this in that. I'm also incredibly underwhelmed by TOs not understanding how to actually highlight player rivalries. The closest they came was that recent video that Machine did where like they talked about like Zewu versus Simple, and you know, like that at least came along. Like, dude, imagine having events for the last 2 years where 2 players realistically were battling each other, and this wasn't the main storyline when these 2 teams could win the event of the entire tournaments. But it wasn't. It was just a side story occasionally referenced. That is mental. Like, anyone who follows the NFL knows they even inappropriately make matchups. Like, they make it sound like Drew Brees plays Tom Brady. He doesn't. He plays Tom Brady's defense, but it's close enough that you can sort of crowbar the narrative in. But I can't believe in games like esports they don't do it. I even called Riot out for this when they didn't even used to highlight Doublelift versus Bjergsen properly when they used to play each other in the LCS. So it's like, someone like that almost can't be helped, you know.
I feel like the corporate side of esports, when they're looking at people that they're taking on, they're looking at the views and the clicks that they're going to bring, and then they completely forego the ability of the people that they're bringing in to use the narrative of the games and to use basically rivalries like C9 versus SK and stuff like that. That was a couple years ago, but things like that they can use to hype and hype and hype. And basically the big money people are just like, well, this guy has the best metrics, so we'll pick him. It's moronic.
Oh, basically, one of the biggest problems ever is, and you might have seen, I've referenced this in videos, it's not a joke. The pencil pushers run esports.
It sucks.
It's the same, by the way, it's the same as every other field. Same as comic books. It's the same as movies. So what you get is, you get the occasional person who still does amazing work, right? And you might naively think they're in the industry. So I don't know how many of you in this call know this, but does anyone here know basically the real reason why Christopher Nolan gets to make movies the way he wants, and it doesn't matter what focus groups make and they come out the way he likes? Does anyone happen to know the reason? It's a very obvious reason if you know.
Because he's got enough money and he's intimidating enough to shut people up?
No.
He's always under budget. He's always under time. He works really well with the studio. He's like, comparing him to, what's the Mad Max guy? Like the Mad Max director, he's always over budget. George Miller, that's it. George Miller's always over budget, like, yeah, and tricks the studio to how to get more money.
These are all good angles, but I'll tell you the hack he has that none of you know. This is amazing, none of you know, but the fact that none of you know, by the way, I think is intentional. Christopher Nolan's wife is his producer.
You're banging?
That's how the studio controls movies and directors. So if you go and look on IMDb now, pick someone out, Ridley Scott. You might not be aware of this, but Ridley Scott might have produced like 3 times more movies than he's directed. Now, do you believe he really is sat there in a chair behind the director looking through the lens of the camera telling him what to do? No. But I tell you what he is there to do. He's there to do things like, in his case, ensure a certain standard, check that the vision's correct, check that actors aren't acting out. Like, he's there to sort of like just facilitate some things. So basically, Christopher Nolan has hijacked the Hollywood system because the person who is supposed to be incentivized to battle him has a greater incentive to work with him. Now, that's basically what you have to do to get past the pencil pushers. You have to get them. So I tried to do it by having Monty as my right-hand man at Flashpoint. We just unfortunately couldn't get some of the other resources we needed. You've got to find other ways if you're going to work in the system to sort of subvert it. But, and this is the key detail, When you do it, they still won't like it, and if you don't succeed, they'll boot you. That's why the whole thing about Tenet, like everyone complained about it and not liking it, that might actually really have hurt his career. Like that gamble might not have paid off, because unfortunately, he was playing a game where he could only win by having the box office success. So if you do it, there will also be reprisals. Because again, you know what? Pencil pushers are exactly like the people we discussed like 20 minutes ago. They just resent you. Because at the end of the day, I've always given this example. So one of the people, I'll give you a quick example because I'm going to wreck this person soon enough. One of the people who's the main hiring person for DreamHack was a guy who was a peer of mine in like 2010, and he worked for HLTV.org. But then what happened was, back then, when the most you could maybe make in your salary was like $12,000 a year, and that was like an 80-hour-a-week job, and you never got to have time off. I've literally never celebrated a birthday at home while I was doing that job. I had to go to Hanover, Germany and Seabit and stay in a fucking cheap hostel. When you do that life, right, a lot of people eventually just go, this isn't really what I wanted. Oh, what's that? I could get like $50,000 and be like I could work for the TO. And I sort of still get to be creative because I get to hire people and I get to have a little bit of say in, what the video's like. That person, if you then make it like I did, and all of a sudden they have to hire you 10 years later and you're still doing exactly what you want, and they have to hire you for a day rate that's maybe like a third of what they get in a whole fucking month, they resent that. So they'll hire you when they have to. I'll tell you what, the second they don't, the knives come out. So in these cases, unfortunately, that like basically creatives and people who are like money managers and financial people are almost at odds at this point in time. And it's one of the reasons why, without spoiling anything, I'm just not going that route anymore. Like my logic instead is, why don't I just get someone who knows how to talk to these investors and tell them to raise millions, get them millions and just fucking do it myself? Why do I need this bonehead at ESL in Cologne to tell me what I can do?
I think part
It's
of
got to be like
knowing how.
Go for it.
But knowing like the kind of people who know how to speak the language of the pencil pushers, because that's what I've always heard that Nolan is really good at knowing how to kind of talk their language. James Cameron is ridiculous at this as well. There's a video of him saying a story where like he went over budget on Titanic, so he gave up like a lot of the money rights for that movie because he didn't keep his word and keep under budget. Nolan was involved with Snyder's recent stuff.
Yes, I believe he produces the Snyder superhero stuff, yeah.
But he didn't do all of it. He did the first one to try and get him up and running, and then he did the most recent one because it's like he's got really good terms with the studio. He knows how to like talk the language of the studio people, whereas like a lot of creative people don't. And so it's like, look, I'll do the studio stuff. I'll kind of help you out there. You just try and make your movie.
I don't know, maybe I'll have to ask Zen this, because he's like the only person who was on every one of these or probably watched them. Zen, have I ever told the story on here of how the guy who did The Walking Dead got that comic to be made?
I don't think so.
Right, I'll tell you the short version. And by the way, the best part about stories like these is even if some of the details turn out to be wrong, they're probably wrong because I made the story better, because it's about what the essence of the story, not whether it actually happened. Like, this story is true, whether it happened or not. And if you don't get that, I actually did a video about that concept once. Basically, here's the premise, right? The guy who wrote The Walking Dead, basically, as far as I know, it was one of those ones where, like, no one had ever had a comic where the main premise was, like, zombies had taken over the world. Like, nothing like that had ever been a massive comic that was, like, selling loads and is, like, flying off the news rack, and everyone in the modern day, has downloaded it to their Kindle. Like, people download Superman, or they download Batman, or they download Spider-Man, or maybe they download it if, like, it has an enormous creator name on it, and he was an enormous creator. So supposedly, when he went to this independent, I think it was Image Comics, actually, when he went to these people and started to tell them this, he very quickly, because he's intelligent, figured out, fuck, they're not going for this. So what he told them was, when they were like, but I don't think a zombie comic would sell like that, So each issue's like survivors trying to like survive from the zombies, but then just getting away from them, and then they've got to meet someone new, and then there's still a reason as to why the zombies would get them. It can never resolve. You got to go like that. Doesn't sound like people are going to buy it. He goes, yeah, but imagine when they find out in like, I can't remember what he said, in a later issue, that aliens sent the zombies as a tool to seed the earth and take over it before they reveal themselves. And that's what the story's all about. And the guy was like, holy shit, That sounds incredible. Okay. I mean, that sounds like that could really sell. Like that sounds really exciting. So he started doing it, right? And supposedly, luckily, the comic was selling really well, the first issues. Because when the like guy who's, I'm assuming, like, you know, the equivalent of like the label boss in music or whatever, the guy who publishes him, came back to him, supposedly at some point he came back to the writer and said, like, you must be being really subtle here, because like I can't see where the alien thread's coming in. Like, when does that come in? And because eventually it succeeded enough, he just told him, like, nah, there are no aliens, mate.
That's one way to get it done.
Now, again, I wouldn't do that because it's lying, but listen, in the confines of what that guy was trying to do, it's pretty fire angle.
That's like what George Miller, when working on the latest Mad Max, they were like, okay, you've got way over budget, just wrap it up. He filmed like half of all the scenes, like half of a scene. So when they like went to the studio to see what they could make together, it was unusable. So then they had to give him more money to finish the movie.
It's genius, yeah.
It does mean that you're not going to.
I mean, what we're getting to here, though, which is the reason for these stories, is you're not going to go to these people and make the points we made on this show and then have them at the end go, yeah, great point. Here's all the money. Yeah, we're idiots. We're going to shut up now. Like, essentially, you have to mind. I mean, another trick you use, this is a classic trick, is you let them think it was their fucking idea. It wasn't. You just seed enough of it that they finally, their brain can make a simple leap from one neuron to another. And they go, oh, and it's like that. And you go, exactly. Great idea. But we should write that down, actually. It was what you were intended to do all along, you know.
Go ahead.
I work in agriculture in the Midwest. I work for one of the largest egg producers. And the nature of dealing with many grumpy old men, especially in the Midwest, is exactly what you were saying, is basically bringing them to an end where they understand the solution but think they came up with it, or dealing with the fact that you emailed them with that solution 4 weeks ago and they're finally understanding it and bringing it forth. And like, so much of success in dealing with people, whether it's selling tickets for an event or advertisements and stuff like that, is just the ability to constantly convince and get people to give you their faith, which is how Nolan and Miller and they have their ways, and it's freaking maniacal. I wouldn't say necessarily Machiavellian, but like, the ability to convince is underrated.
I mean, put it this way, I did it myself. Like, as I told that story, a lot of people miss this detail because I don't make a big deal out of it. I wasn't actually originally supposed to do anything with Flashpoint. What happened was they hired Monty, who then like brought me along as well, to be consultants, to talk to them about some ideas for how they might do something like Flashpoint, since the PEA project years before just died on its ass and had a terrible rep. And what we did was, instead of going in and just saying, right, here's what we think, and then everyone contributing for a meeting, like, I'll give you an example, like the Face It people had like a whole fucking like slideshow that essentially when they started playing, I just told them, like, I just sort of spoke up and said, that format's shit and I'm not interested. And they were like, oh, okay. And then just like closed like the PDF down. Like, basically, we just delivered such a straight fire angle, which was like, we're gonna go like WWE style. It'll open up different sponsors. We'll do it. But we were talking their language. That's the point. And that is what hooked them. It wasn't, by the way, the things that actually make Flashpoint awesome. Like the idea that if you'd bought teams, you'd have amazing teams in the league and they'd show them off. It has an amazing format that's super sturdy and could potentially create a story. Those were aspects that, like, if they get to pick a sexy aspect and have that, yeah, that's awesome. But if we'd have only brought the nuts and bolts, they probably would have said no. They probably would have passed. They probably would have done Face It's idea and had a bunch of best of ones and a league. And like, they would have done all sorts of the old shite business as usual, you know, because the problem is another pencil pusher would have shown them a graph and a pie chart and shown them the viewership on this match. Is just like, and someone would have just sold them on that angle. If you want the conspiracy angle, though, I'll give you one side tangent. The other problem here is actually that these are enormous companies, because enormous companies intentionally have pencil pusher motherfuckers like that to bottleneck things, because they don't want to take massive risks. They don't want to push boundaries. They don't. I know everyone's been told this lie that all companies just do things for money. It ain't true. They do it for social control. They do it to control a brand, control an image, your perception of who they are as a company. Those things can weigh out. They can be way more important than money. If it was just about money, why would Flashpoint pay people who didn't work the events? Remember, every fan's going to go, cynical companies just saving money by laying off employees if it's like Blizzard. Well, then why didn't the Flashpoint owners just say, fuck the people who didn't work there, we're not paying them? Because they didn't want bad PR. They didn't want people to think differently of them, maybe in some tangential sense. So for them, it was worth losing money that was literally just throwing money into a black hole that you weren't obligated in any sense to pay just to be seen a certain way. The problem is there's a negative way that manifests as well. That's why the other thing I'm trying to do now is I don't want to work with big companies. I want to work with people where I go to a guy, I make a deal with him, and I work with him. And luckily for me, as motherfuckers like the Score Esports have shown, you can get these things done with like 4 people. 4 people with the right skill sets and then someone who brings the money. That's all you need. You can do literally anything in the industry, except this is where TOs are different. This is why I'm not going to be involved with TOs. You won't be able to put on a giant like ESL Cologne stadium event. Like you can imagine the sort of crew you need for that, the people you need for that, like the planning, the logistical things, the relationships with event managers and with fucking transportation. Like that's like the one area people don't understand is people like ESL, in terms of things that you don't see on camera, are absurdly competent. It's just that when they come to the creative stuff, they don't know what the fuck they're doing, do they? Do we have another angle? Is there another topic? Maybe one last topic?
I just feel like as soon as an organization, especially in esports, is large enough that goodwill takes up a considerable amount on their balance sheet, like they can profit from their word and their intention, it's going to get abused.
I mean, that's essentially why these companies cultivate that. That's why they do all the woke shit. None of them believe in the woke shit. Like, here's the thing. It's going to seem weird I say that because you'll see people in their company who believe in it. The best example is Riot Games. There are loads of female rioters who've tweeted all the time and tried to leak stuff about, it's bloody a disgrace. They won't leave. And the reason is, they just get told a lie, like, we'll work with you, we'll help you do it. But the top people are like, fucking idiots. They're just useful idiots. Keep them around. If anything, they're shields for us. All right, Zen, didn't you have a question, actually? Maybe you can have the last question here, mate.
I mean, it was a joke, but maybe we can make it more serious. So my joke was going to be, are you going to use the Morgan Stanley report for good, so to build your future empire? But more.
Well, the funny thing is, there is a way you can back that up, yeah.
Yeah, it's basically how... I mean, obviously you have your principles and you've been always, very, very aligned with them. But here, you kind of have to, sell a dream to a venture capital or whatever, when it's like a 10% chance that will actually happen.
Here's my angle, mate. I don't sell the dream. I sell my dream. And if you can see the difference between that, there's a reason why people line up to give that dumb motherfucker Elon Musk all their money. Because it's not whether his idea can work. It's that it's Elon Musk. Dude, they think that they're getting the next Steve Jobs. They're like, oh my God, I've got to be in on this. How can I not? It's Elon Musk. This is awesome. I'm funding Elon Musk. So as a result, that's what I'm selling people now, is me. And guess what? There's a lot of people in the fucking market for that. Now, not in the sense that they can buy me and I do what they say, but it's like, I make it like this. It's what basically I'm doing in my career, what esports, in my opinion, should always have done, which is you don't go to fucking Madison Avenue and all the people with all the money in Silicon Valley and say, if you guys give us the money, we'll change everything just how you want it and fuck it all up for you. Because that's how you ruin the whole industry and no one gets what they want. What you do is you wait till they come to you and you say, I have one of the best sports in the world. It's the next sport. It's the one that captures all the demographic you want. You want in? Well, here's my terms. And then you make people bid against each other. And now they're agreeing to your terms. So I'm doing that on a personal level, basically. I get what your point is. Like, listen, if you think I couldn't just turn to the dark side, or maybe if I had like a car accident, the right part of my brain got destroyed, I couldn't just tell the best and most beautiful lies ever and write the most fucked narratives and spin the most evil web ever. Like, there's a reason why people who don't know accents that well think I just am like Littlefinger from Game of Thrones. Like, I could do that, mate. I've seen that darkness. That's one of the reasons I turn away from it. I'm aware that that's possible. So I would never personally go down that route. It's not my style. But I get the premise, though. You could definitely use the weapons of the enemy against them to some degree. But as my boy Sean Bean Boromir found out, certain weapons come with a cost, mate. Your soul.
I feel like so there are people, especially this is a big capitalism narrative. There's people, if you want to make it goofy, people that are in search of people that are dumb enough to give them all of their money. And then there are people that are in search of audiences that will put good money towards their idea because they trust where it's coming from. I just feel like there's a big distinction between people seeking all audiences and the more noble and humble people, you know, not sacrificing themselves for profit.
The funny thing about it as well, by the way, mate, is in a slightly different world, I'm not sure what decade I'd have to pick or if it ever existed. But first of all, you can obviously, as you're alluded to, you can obviously make a lot of money just by selling only to your audience. But even more than that, in my opinion, I actually think, I'll give you the best example ever. There is no money whatsoever in being a super mainstream famous porn actress right now. There's nothing. Because all the videos are leaked for free online, half the time by the cunts that are either your people or the other party, right? So the days of being Jenna Jameson, where you'll just get paid millions to be Jenna Jameson because everyone buying porn knows who you are, those are gone. But everyone knows right now there's some girl on OnlyFans that isn't even famous. She's just in your city. She was probably at your school 2 years ago. And she gets maybe 10,000 a month as a nobody because her fans are so dedicated to exactly her brand because of who she is. So the point is, I even think you can make, in terms of per audience member, more money, by the way, magnitudes more, than selling essentially something shit for 10 cents to everyone in the whole world and have everyone buy it. So that's also the reason why, I mean, again, sadly, you have to go in the whole conspiracy angle. Like, listen, the people who do sell the millions of pieces of shit that cost 10 cents, they will fuck you up and shut you down if they can, especially if you're their rivals. But where it's possible to exist like that, you not only is it a way better way of living, but you can actually still make a very good living doing that.
Yeah, I don't even.
You can be very successful.
I don't think it's even like a noble thing necessarily. Like I have what I would call like a closed community or whatever, a gated community in terms of internet style, where I actually vet people who come in to do like with the stuff that I do on the side that's not even related to esports, where I'm doing my RTS game development stuff, right? And the reason being is I don't want people who are not interested in the same things that I'm interested in, not in the sense that I'm closed-minded, but if you're going to come and join and be a part of the whole thing that I'm putting together, then I want to make sure that you're in it for quote unquote the right reasons, to make it very simple and short. And the reason why that's actually better is that like you are going to get, maybe you're going to get some decent monetization or whatever, like what you guys were just talking about, but you also just get this agreement of at least core principles that matter to all of you, to at least somewhere in the degree of some similar degree of in terms of how important they are to you. And you can agree on those things, and then you can have the conversations that are a little bit maybe disparate. Maybe you can have some debate about stuff, but as long as everybody knows that everybody in the community is there for the same essential principal reason of trying to further whatever goals you're trying to further, then at that point you can essentially move together in a way that you're never going to be able to if you are trying to appeal to a mainstream audience. You'll never get that deep because nobody's there for that. They're only there for essentially the surface level reasons, right?
Mm-hmm. And I feel like if you set strong boundaries, you allow yourself to thrive as much as you can within those boundaries. And if those boundaries are agreed upon people, like you were saying, debate comes in, but there's obviously a certain point where it becomes ad hominem, personal attacks, et cetera, et cetera. But like, there's so many, whether it's groups online or things like that, that people just fail to set those boundaries and think that setting boundaries is bad when realistically it's part of respectful discourse.
Right. Yeah, I can see what you're talking about there.
I mean, by the way, that's also another area where anytime you ever see a moron on Reddit, like, finally he is pissing all the fans off and all the brands he's burned his bridge, no one will hire him. It's like, you're so dumb, you don't understand that is marketing too. Every time I signal to certain people you aren't welcome, the people who are welcome are like, fuck, this is awesome. I'm part of some special group. Like every dumbass who says he blocked me on Twitter, everyone who's not blocked goes, fuck, I'm not blocked. I'm in the group. Shit, I made the cut. That's a
And
real
likewise,
thing.
if they want to be blocked, they're excited. And much like anybody who follows Richard Lewis,
Oh, they're dedicated hitters for
brag
sure, yeah.
endlessly about being blocked by the Titan, the choker himself. Like, same thing goes for Thorin. Oh, I must have pissed him off. It's childish, but it generates.
It's just their way of interacting with me, you know. Like listen, what's stupid is I can get it on a base level. It's just not a trick I ever fell for. Like, I say this in the past, but it's real. Like I'll give you an example. Obviously, me and an analyst from League of Legends called Froskurin are like massively at odds now. We'll probably never be aligned in any sense for the rest of our fucking time on this mortal coil, right? In this scenario, I don't go and watch all of her content religiously so I can find everything she says that I disagree with and write it all down and fucking chart it up. No, I just no longer follow her life and career now. We've gone two different paths. She's welcome to go where she wants. I'm doing what I'm doing. So yeah, there's people where they don't realise what they're actually signalling is something's wrong with them mentally, so that they're sort of like, it's why actually anti-fan is a better term than hater. Because hater implies like, I hate that. Like if you hate fucking, sadly, like, I know not everyone's going to understand this example because you're fucking Americans, some of you, but if you hate Marmite, you don't keep eating it every now and then just in case to go, oh, I fucking hate this. You have it one time in your life and you go, I'll never eat that again. Yeah. An anti-fan is like the motherfucker who every day he puts the Marmite on his toast, every day he eats it, every day he complains about it. And then when someone goes, why do you keep eating the Marmite? He just goes, shut up. What, you Thorin fan or something? Like, there's just people like that in this world, you know, which, by the way, fair enough. In the current model I have, where I haven't been able to go totally pay-per-view and lock the doors on all these motherfuckers and dispense the Kool-Aid to all of you, at this point in time, those people are somewhat welcome. Their click count's the same. They can just click it, type the stupid shit, I won't read it, and we'll all go on with our lives. That might be the perfect ending point. This video was kindly supported by Bobby, Lager15, Pronogo, Zachary Carter, Andrew, Alexander Rao, Andreas Kroknes, Animosity, Dean Tanglis, ErikHillestad, Hades, Jdubs, Jensen Goh, Tobias Bernasconi, Zyrathenia, Zoomba, and as always, a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my shows? Do you want to ask a question for my monthly video AMA? Want teasers for who's coming up on my content? Or do you even want to take part in one of those exclusive discussions with me about esports? If so, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skilluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.